Rain hammered the glass walls of the penthouse while Seoul's skyline burned gold beneath the storm. Maria Vale stood pinned between cold marble and the most dangerous man in the city, her husband of 18 months who had never once looked at her like this. Kang Min-jae's palm slammed beside her head. The sound cracked through the room like a gunshot. "You let him touch you." His voice was low, lethal. She refused to back away. "He shook my hand." "You smiled at him." Jealousy tore across his face, raw and unfamiliar, because men like Kang Min-jae didn't lose control. Yet tonight, the ruthless Mafia chairman who ruled half of Seoul looked one breath away from destroying anyone who dared look at his wife. "I'm your husband," he said, the words rough with possession. For the first time since their arranged marriage began, Maria realized the distance between them had never been indifference. It had been restraint. If you want to see how a marriage built on lies becomes the only thing worth dying for, stay until the end. Drop a like and comment your city so I can see how far this story travels. Retaliation. The marriage contract had been signed in silence. No vows, no promises, no pretense of love. Just Maria's signature trembling across expensive paper while her father stood in the corner of the lawyer's office looking 10 years older than he had the week before. The bankruptcy had gutted him, left him hollow, desperate enough to trade his only daughter to a man whose name made politicians sweat and business rivals disappear. Kang Min-jae had barely looked at her during the signing. He wore a black suit that probably cost more than her college tuition. His face was unreadable, sharp jaw, dark eyes, the kind of composed stillness that made people nervous without understanding why. He signed his name in 3 efficient strokes, closed the folder, and left the room without a single word to his new wife. That was 18 months ago. 18 months of living in separate wings of a penthouse that felt more like a museum than a home. 18 months of polite dinners where they discussed weather and stock markets and never once touched. 18 months of playing the role of Mrs. Kang at charity galas and corporate events, while photographers captured a marriage that didn't exist outside the camera frame. Maria had learned the rules quickly. Don't ask questions, don't enter his office, don't expect affection. Don't mistake the ring on her finger for anything more than a business transaction that saved her father from financial ruin and gave Min-jae the political legitimacy his empire needed. She was decoration, a prop in expensive dresses who smiled on command and disappeared when the cameras stopped flashing. It should have been unbearable, but Maria had made peace with it. She had her own money now, a generous allowance deposited monthly into an account she never asked about. She had freedom within the gilded cage. She had space to breathe in a life that could have been so much worse, and she had learned not to expect anything from the man who slept 3 doors down and treated her like a stranger. Until tonight. The charity gala had been routine. Another black tie affair filled with Seoul's elite pretending to care about underprivileged children while sipping champagne that cost more than most families made in a month. Maria had perfected her role. Smile, nod, make small talk, stay within 3 feet of Min-jae during photo opportunities, then drift away when the cameras moved on. She had been standing near the bar when the man approached. Tall? Well-dressed? Mid-30s with the kind of confident smile that came from never being told no. He introduced himself as Seoji Hwan, extended his hand, and asked if she was enjoying the evening. Maria shook his hand because refusing would have caused a scene. She smiled because that's what she had been trained to do for 18 months. She made polite conversation for exactly 90 seconds before excusing herself to rejoin the crowd. It meant nothing. Less than nothing. But when she glanced back toward Min-jae across the ballroom, she found him staring directly at her with an expression she had never seen before. Dark. Focused. Dangerous. The gala ended 2 hours later. The car ride home was silent, except for the rain hammering the windows and the quiet hum of the engine. Min-jae sat across from her in the back of the black sedan, his face illuminated in flashes by passing streetlights. He didn't speak, didn't look at her, but tension radiated off him like heat from pavement after a storm. Maria kept her hands folded in her lap and her mouth shut. When they arrived at the penthouse, Min-jae exited the car first and walked toward the private elevator without waiting. Maria followed 3 steps behind, their usual arrangement. The elevator ride up 47 floors felt longer than usual. The silence pressed against her eardrums. She could hear her own breathing. The doors opened. Min-jae stepped into the penthouse and headed straight toward his office. Maria moved toward her wing. "Stop!" His voice cut through the space like a blade. She froze. Turned. Min-jae stood in the center of the living room beneath the crystal chandelier, his back to her. Rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows. Seoul's skyline glowed gold and red beyond the glass. "Come here." It wasn't a request. Maria crossed the marble floor slowly. Her heels clicked against stone. Her heart kicked against her ribs for reasons she couldn't name. When she stopped 3 feet away, Min-jae finally turned to face her. Up close, she could see the tension in his jaw, the tightness around his eyes, the way his hands flexed once at his sides before he forced them still. "Who was he?" Min-jae asked quietly. Maria blinked. "Who?" "The man at the gala." "I don't know. He introduced himself. We talked for maybe a minute." "You smiled at him." She stared. "I smile at a lot of people." "Not like that." "Like what?" Min-jae stepped closer. Then closer. Maria's spine hit the wall behind her before she realized she had been backing up. He didn't touch her, didn't need to. He just braced one hand against the marble beside her head and leaned in until she could smell his cologne, cedar and something darker. "Like you wanted him to keep talking," Min-jae said, his voice low and rough. "I was being polite." "You let him touch you." He shook my hand. "You laughed at something he said." Maria's pulse hammered in her throat. "What is this?" "Answer the question." "I don't even remember what he said. It was small talk, meaningless." Min-jae's other hand came up to brace against the wall on her opposite side, caging her in. His face was inches from hers now. She could see the flecks of amber in his dark eyes, could feel the heat radiating off his body. "Do you know what I saw?" he asked quietly. "What?" "My wife smiling at another man the way she has never smiled at me." The words landed like a slap. Maria opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. We're married. On paper. You wear my ring, because I was told to." Something cracked behind Min-jae's composure. Just for a second. A flicker of emotion too fast to name. He exhaled slowly through his nose like he was trying to control something that wanted to break free. "You think I don't know what this is?" he said. "You think I don't understand the deal we made? Then why do you care who I talk to?" "Because you're mine." The possessiveness in his voice sent a shiver down her spine that had nothing to do with fear. "I'm not a thing you own," Maria said. "No." Min-jae's gaze dragged across her face like he was memorizing every detail. "You're the one thing I can't afford to want." The confession hung between them. Maria's breath caught. Before she could respond, Min-jae pushed away from the wall and crossed to the windows. He stood with his back to her, hands shoved in his pockets, staring out at the rain-soaked city below. "Go to bed," he said quietly. "Min-jae, go." Maria fled. She made it to her room, locked the door, and pressed her back against the wood while her heart tried to hammer its way out of her chest. Her hands were shaking. Her skin felt too hot. She touched her lips and realized she had been holding her breath waiting for him to kiss her, waiting for her husband to finally cross the line he had drawn between them 18 months ago. But he hadn't. He had sent her away instead. Maria stripped out of her gown and stood under a cold shower until her pulse returned to normal and the adrenaline stopped buzzing through her veins. Then she climbed into bed and stared at the ceiling while rain drummed against the windows. Sleep didn't come. Around 3 in the morning, she finally gave up and padded barefoot to the kitchen for water. The penthouse was dark except for the ambient glow of the city beyond the glass. She filled a glass from the tap and drank it standing at the sink. That's when she noticed the light beneath Min-jae's office door. He was still awake. Maria set the glass down and walked toward the light before she could talk herself out of it. She raised her hand to knock, hesitated, then pushed the door open instead. Min-jae sat behind his desk in the same suit he had worn to the gala, minus the jacket and tie. His shirt sleeves were rolled to his elbows. A laptop glowed in front of him. His phone sat face down beside a half-empty glass of whiskey. He looked up when she entered. Neither of them spoke for a long moment. "You should be asleep," Min-jae said finally. "So should you." "I have work." "At 3 in the morning?" He didn't answer, just turned his attention back to the laptop screen. Maria crossed the office and sat in the chair across from his desk. Min-jae's jaw tightened, but he didn't order her to leave. Who was he? She asked. No one you need to worry about. You're lying. Min Jae's fingers stilled on the keyboard. He lifted his gaze slowly to meet hers. Excuse me? You don't lose your temper over strangers making small talk. So who was he? For a moment she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he closed the laptop, leaned back in his chair, picked up the whiskey and drained it in one swallow. Seo Ji-hwan, he said quietly, head of the Southern District Syndicate, my primary competitor for port access and political influence. A man who has spent the last 2 years trying to dismantle everything I've built. Ice slid down Maria's spine. And you let me talk to him, she whispered. I didn't let you do anything. You didn't know. But you knew. Yes. And you just watched. Min Jae's expression darkened. What would you have had me do? Drag you away in front of 300 witnesses? Because a scene that would have made headlines by morning? You could have warned me. When? We don't exactly have conversations. The accusation landed hard. Maria flinched. Min Jae saw it and looked away. This is my fault, he said quietly. I kept you separate from my world. Told myself it was safer that way. That if you didn't know the details, you couldn't become a target. He laughed. A bitter, hollow sound. Turns out isolation just made you vulnerable in a different way. What does he want? The same thing every ambitious man wants. Power, territory, legitimacy. Min Jae met her eyes again. And the fastest way to take those things from me is to exploit the one weakness I've shown in 18 months. What weakness? You. The word hung in the air between them. Maria's pulse kicked. I'm not your weakness, she said. We barely know each other. That's what I've been telling myself for a year and a half. Min Jae stood and circled the desk until he was standing directly in front of her. But when I saw you smile at him tonight, I wanted to put a bullet between his eyes in the middle of that ballroom. Maria's breath caught. That's not rational, she managed. No, it's not. We have an arrangement, not a marriage. I know. You've never even touched me. I know that too. Then why, because I can't. The words came out rough, almost angry. Min Jae braced his hands on the arms of her chair and leaned down until their faces were level. Do you understand? I can't want you, can't afford to care, can't let myself feel anything that could be used against me, against us. But you do. Yes. The confession cracked something open between them. Maria reached up slowly and touched his face, her palm against his jaw. His skin was warm, rough with late-night stubble. She felt him tense beneath her hand like he was bracing for impact. How long? She asked quietly. Min Jae closed his eyes. Since the day you signed the contract. You didn't even look at me. I couldn't. If I had looked at you the way I wanted to, your father would have seen it. My lawyers would have seen it, and they would have known the marriage wasn't strategic, that I wasn't negotiating from a position of control. He opened his eyes. So I taught myself not to look. And now? Now Ji-hwan has seen what I tried to hide, and he will use it. Maria's hand fell away from his face. Min Jae straightened and crossed back to the windows. He stood silhouetted against the Seoul skyline with his shoulders rigid and his hands clenched at his sides. What happens next? Maria asked. He'll escalate, push boundaries, test weaknesses, try to destabilize me psychologically before moving against my business interests. And me? You stay close. No more charity events without a full security detail. No leaving the penthouse without approval. No contact with anyone I haven't vetted personally. You're making me a prisoner. Min Jae turned. I'm keeping you alive. Same thing. No, it's not. He crossed the office in 3 strides and pulled her to her feet. His hands gripped her shoulders, the first time he had deliberately touched her in 18 months. A prisoner has no choice. You can walk away right now, file for divorce, take the settlement money and disappear. I won't stop you. Maria stared up at him. You'd let me go. If it kept you safe from this world? Yes. And if I don't want to go? Min Jae's grip tightened. Then you accept that everything changes, the distance, the separation, the pretending we're strangers. His voice dropped. All of it ends. Why? Because I'm tired of lying to myself about what you mean to me. Maria's heart slammed against her ribs. She should have walked away, should have taken the out he was offering, should have run from a man who lived in violence and called it business. Instead, she rose on her toes and kissed him. Min-jae went completely still for 3 heartbeats. Then his control shattered. He kissed her back like a man starving, like 18 months of restraint had finally snapped. His hand slid from her shoulders to her waist, pulling her flush against him. Maria gasped against his mouth, and he took the opportunity to deepen the kiss, hungry and demanding and desperate in a way that made her knees weak. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathing hard. "This is a mistake," Min-jae said roughly. "Probably." "It makes you a target." "I know." "I can't protect you and keep you at the same time." Maria fisted her hands in his shirt. "Then stop trying to protect me from you." Min-jae stared down at her for a long moment. Then he kissed her again, slower this time. Thorough, like he was memorizing the taste of her. When he pulled back, his expression had shifted into something Maria recognized. Decision. "Pack a bag," he said quietly. "What?" "We're leaving Seoul tonight. Somewhere Ji-hwan can't follow. Somewhere I can lock down security and buy myself time to plan." Min-jae released her and crossed to his desk. He pulled out his phone and started typing rapidly. "I have a private estate 2 hours outside the city. Reinforced walls, armed guards. No access except by helicopter." "You're serious?" "Completely." "For how long?" "As long as it takes to dismantle Ji-hwan's operation and eliminate the threat." He looked up. "Or until you decide this life isn't worth it and leave." Maria should have been terrified, should have recognized the danger of being locked away with a man who operated outside the law and called it protection. But all she felt was the lingering heat of his kiss and the knowledge that walking away now would mean spending the rest of her life wondering what they could have been. "I'll pack," she said. Min-jae nodded once. Then he returned his attention to his phone, already issuing orders to people Maria couldn't see. She left the office and headed toward her bedroom. It wasn't until she was pulling clothes from her closet that her hands started shaking. Not from fear, from the realization that she had just agreed to lock herself in isolation with the most dangerous man in Seoul. And some part of her, the part that had learned to survive in a gilded cage by becoming invisible, was terrified of what would happen when he finally looked at her the way he wanted to. 30 minutes later, Maria stood in the penthouse foyer with a packed bag at her feet while Min-jae coordinated logistics on his phone. He had changed into dark tactical clothing, black pants, black shirt, holster visible at his hip. Seeing him armed made everything real in a way it hadn't been before. "Ready?" he asked when he ended the call. "No." The corner of his mouth twitched, almost a smile. "Good. Neither am I." Before she could respond, the elevator doors opened. A man stepped out, late 30s, military bearing, scar bisecting his left eyebrow. He nodded to Min-jae. "Chopper's on the roof. Advanced team is already at the estate securing the perimeter." "Good." Min-jae picked up Maria's bag. "Let's move." They took the private elevator to the roof. Rain still hammered the city. Wind whipped across the landing pad hard enough to make Maria stumble. Min-jae caught her elbow and guided her toward the waiting helicopter. The rotors were already spinning. He helped her inside, then climbed in beside her. The scarred man took the co-pilot seat. The helicopter lifted off. Seoul fell away beneath them, a glittering sprawl of light and steel disappearing into rain and darkness. Maria pressed her face to the window and watched the city shrink until it looked like a circuit board scattered across black earth. Min-jae's hand found hers in the darkness. She laced her fingers through his and held on. 2 hours later, the helicopter descended toward a sprawling estate carved into mountainside forest. Spotlights illuminated reinforced walls and guard towers. Armed men moved through the compound with military precision. The helicopter touched down. Min-jae exited first, then turned to help Maria out. Wind whipped her hair across her face. He pulled her close and guided her toward a stone manor house that looked like it had been designed to withstand a siege. Inside, the decor was sparse, functional. Nothing like the sleek luxury of the Seoul penthouse. A woman in her 50s approached. Gray hair pulled into a tight bun, sharp eyes, efficient movements. "Mrs. Kang," she said with a slight bow. "I'm Mrs. Choi. I manage the household staff. Your room is ready. Dinner will be served in 1 hour if you'd like to freshen up." Maria glanced at Min-jae. He nodded. Go. I have calls to make. Mrs. Choi led Maria through stone corridors to a bedroom on the second floor. Large windows overlooked dark forest. The furniture was solid and masculine, nothing delicate or decorative. Will you need anything else? Mrs. Choi asked. No, thank you. The woman left. Maria sat on the edge of the bed and tried to process everything that had happened in the last 4 hours. She had kissed her husband, agreed to isolation, left Seoul in the middle of the night to hide in a fortress while the man she barely knew prepared for war. And somehow, despite the insanity of it all, she didn't regret it. Dinner was served in a small dining room with a view of the darkened forest. Min-jae had changed into black slacks and a dark gray sweater. He looked almost relaxed except for the tension still visible in his shoulders. They ate in silence for several minutes. Then Maria set down her fork. How long have you owned this place? She asked. 5 years. I bought it after a business deal went wrong and I needed somewhere secure to regroup. Define went wrong. Min-jae's mouth twitched. 3 of my warehouses were firebombed in a coordinated attack. I lost 2 men and several million in product. What did you do? Burned 6 of theirs. Killed 4 of their lieutenants. Negotiated a truce from a position of strength. He took a drink of wine. Then I bought this estate so I'd never be caught unprepared again. Maria absorbed that. You talk about killing people the way other men talk about quarterly earnings. In my world, they're the same thing. Does it bother you? Sometimes. He set down his glass. Less than it should, probably. Why? Because the alternative is being the one who gets killed. And I decided a long time ago that I'd rather live as a monster than die as a martyr. The honesty should have repulsed her. Instead, it made him feel more human. What about Ji-hwan? Maria asked. What happens now? Now I dismantle his operation piece by piece until he has no choice but to come at me directly. Then I finish it. Finish it how? Min-jae held her gaze. Do you really want to know? No. Yes. I'll give him one chance to walk away. If he refuses, I'll kill him. The words were delivered with the same calm he had used to discuss wine pairings 5 minutes earlier. Maria's pulse kicked. And you're okay with that, she said quietly. I don't lose sleep over removing threats to the people I care about. Even if it makes you the villain? Especially then. Min-jae leaned back in his chair. You want to know the truth? I stopped caring about being the good guy the day I realized good men finish last and dead. So I became the thing people fear instead. And it's kept me alive for 15 years in a business where the average lifespan is 3. Maria studied him across the table. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? I don't know, someone colder, more detached. I am detached, except when it comes to you. The confession landed between them like a grenade. Maria's throat went dry. Before she could respond, Min-jae's phone buzzed on the table. He glanced at the screen and his expression went cold. What is it? Maria asked. He turned the phone toward her. A photo filled the screen. Maria's blood turned to ice. It was a picture of her taken tonight at the penthouse, standing in the kitchen at 3 in the morning in her nightgown, filling a glass of water at the sink. Below it, a single message. Glass walls make such beautiful cages, but they shatter so easily. The sender, Seo Ji-hwan. Min-jae stood slowly. His expression had gone flat, the kind of calm that preceded violence. He was watching, Maria whispered. Yes. He saw us leave. Yes. Then we're not safe here. Min-jae crossed to the window and stared out at the darkness beyond the glass. No, he said quietly. We just bought ourselves time. Maria's hands were shaking. She set down her wine glass before she dropped it. What do we do? She asked. Min-jae turned from the window. His face was a mask, controlled, calculated, lethal. We prepare for war. The war room was carved into the basement of the estate. Concrete walls, steel-reinforced door, no windows. A single table dominated the center of the space, surrounded by monitors displaying security feeds from every angle of the compound, armed guards, perimeter cameras, motion sensors scattered through the forest like digital tripwires. Maria stood in the doorway watching Min Jae orchestrate his response to Ji Hwan's message with the precision of a surgeon preparing to cut. He moved between monitors, issuing orders in rapid Korean to men whose faces she didn't recognize. His voice was calm, controlled, but she could see the tension coiled in his shoulders like a spring wound too tight. 3 hours had passed since the photo arrived. 3 hours of watching her husband transform from the man who had kissed her in his office to the criminal mastermind who ruled Seoul's underworld through fear and strategic violence. The scarred man from the helicopter, Min Jae had introduced him as Tae Sung, his head of security, pointed to one of the monitors. Motion detected. Southeast perimeter, 200 meters out. Min Jae's eyes narrowed. Show me. The camera feed zoomed in on dark forest. Trees swayed in wind. Rain hammered the canopy. For several seconds, Maria saw nothing. Then a figure moved between the trunks, just for a moment. A shadow darker than the surrounding darkness. Then gone. Could be an animal, Tae-sung said. Could be a scout. Min Jae pulled out his phone. Double the guard rotation. I want eyes on that sector every 30 seconds. If anything moves that isn't a deer, I want to know about it. Tae-sung nodded and left the room. Min Jae finally turned to look at Maria. You should go upstairs, he said quietly. I'm fine here. You're exhausted. So are you. He almost smiled. I'm used to it. Maria crossed her arms. How long are we going to pretend I don't know what you're planning? I'm not planning anything. You're lying. Min Jae's jaw tightened. What do you want me to say? That I'm going to send men into Seoul tomorrow to start burning Ji Hwan's operations to the ground? That I'm going to escalate this war until he has no choice but to come at me directly so I can finish it? Yes. Fine, that's exactly what I'm going to do. And me? You stay here behind reinforced walls, protected, isolated, alive. He crossed the room until he was standing directly in front of her. Do you understand what's happening? Ji Hwan sent that photo to prove he can reach you whenever he wants. That glass walls and armed guards don't mean anything if he's determined enough. He's trying to destabilize me, make me emotional, force me into mistakes. Is it working? Min Jae's hands curled into fists at his sides. Yes. The admission hung between them. Maria reached up and touched his face, the same way she had done in his office hours earlier, her palm against his jaw. His skin warm beneath her hand. Then maybe that's the point, she said quietly. Maybe he wants you angry because angry people make mistakes. But you're not angry. You're terrified. Min Jae closed his eyes. I told myself for 18 months that keeping you separate would protect you. That if I never let myself care, you couldn't be used against me. And it worked. Until I saw you smile at him and realized I had been lying to myself the entire time. What are you afraid of? That I'll fail, that I'll make the wrong call and you'll pay for it. He opened his eyes. That I'll choose between saving you and destroying him and pick wrong. Maria's throat tightened. You won't. You don't know that. I know you. You've known me for 4 hours. I've lived with you for 18 months. That's not the same thing. Isn't it? Maria dropped her hand. You think I didn't notice? You think I didn't see the way you watched me when you thought I wasn't looking? The way you made sure I had everything I needed without ever asking for anything in return? The way you kept me safe without making me feel like a prisoner? Min Jae stared at her. I noticed, Maria said quietly. Every time you stayed late at the office so I could have the penthouse to myself. Every time you made sure my favorite foods were stocked in the kitchen. Every time you positioned yourself between me and potential threats at public events without making it obvious. You've been protecting me since the day we met. You just convinced yourself it was strategy instead of something else. It was strategy. Liar. The word cracked through the space between them. Min Jae's control fractured. He grabbed her shoulders and pulled her against him. His mouth found hers in a kiss that tasted like desperation and 18 months of denial. Maria gasped, and he took the opportunity to deepen the kiss, demanding and possessive and hungry in a way that made her knees weak. When they broke apart, both of them were breathing hard. This is a mistake, Min Jae said roughly. You said that already. I meant it. I don't care. He stared down at her for a long moment. Then he kissed her again. Slower this time. thorough, like he was trying to memorize the taste of her before something took it away. When he finally pulled back, his expression had shifted into something Maria couldn't quite read. Decision, resignation, fear. Go upstairs, he said quietly. Get some sleep. Tomorrow is going to be long. What are you going to do? What I should have done the moment Ji Huan looked at you. Which is? End him. The words were delivered with the same calm he used to discuss quarterly reports. Maria's pulse kicked. Don't, she whispered. Min-jae frowned. Don't what? Don't turn yourself into a monster because of me. I've been a monster for 15 years. You just gave me a reason to care about the consequences. He released her and crossed back to the monitors. The conversation was over. Maria left the war room and climbed the stairs to her bedroom. She stripped out of her clothes and stood under a hot shower until her skin turned pink and the adrenaline finally stopped buzzing through her veins. Then she climbed into bed and stared at the ceiling while rain hammered the windows. Sleep came eventually, but when it did, she dreamed of glass walls shattering and shadows moving through dark forests, and Min-jae's voice screaming her name from somewhere she couldn't reach. She woke to sunlight streaming through the windows and the sound of a helicopter landing on the roof. Maria sat up, checked her phone. 9:30 in the morning. She had slept for 6 hours. She dressed quickly in jeans and a sweater, then headed downstairs. The manor was quiet except for the sound of boots on stone and the low murmur of men speaking Korean in clipped military tones. She found Min-jae in the dining room drinking coffee and staring at a tablet. He had showered and changed into black tactical pants and a dark gray shirt. He looked like he had slept exactly 0 hours. Morning, Maria said. He glanced up. You're awake. So are you. I had calls. How long have you been up? I didn't go to bed. Maria poured herself coffee from the carafe on the sideboard and sat across from him. What's happening? Min-jae turned the tablet toward her. The screen displayed a news article in Korean. Maria couldn't read the text, but the photos told the story clearly enough. A warehouse engulfed in flames, fire trucks and police cars, yellow crime scene tape. Translation? She asked. Mysterious fire destroys import facility in Southern District. Authorities suspect arson. No casualties reported. Min-jae took a drink of coffee. That warehouse belonged to Ji Huan. He was using it to move smuggled electronics through customs. I sent a team in at 4 this morning to burn it to the ground. Maria's stomach twisted. You started a war. I escalated one that already started the moment he looked at you. People could have died. The building was empty. I made sure of it. This time. Min-jae set down his coffee. Do you want me to apologize for protecting what's mine? I want you to remember you're not the only one who gets hurt when this goes wrong. It won't go wrong. You don't know that. No. But I know what happens if I do nothing. Ji Huan will push, test boundaries, escalate until he finds a weakness he can exploit. And the second he realizes you matter to me, he will take you and use you as leverage to dismantle everything I've built. Min-jae leaned forward. So I'm not giving him the chance. By burning his business to the ground. By making him choose between his empire and his ego. Most men pick wrong. Maria wrapped her hands around her coffee mug. What if he picks you? Then I'll be ready. Before she could respond, Tae-sung appeared in the doorway. We have movement, he said quietly. Min-jae stood. Where? Main gate, single vehicle, black sedan, no plates. Armed? Can't tell yet. Min-jae crossed to a monitor mounted on the dining room wall and pulled up the security feed. A black sedan had stopped 50 meters from the main gate. The driver's side door opened. A man stepped out. Even on the grainy security footage, Maria recognized him. Seo Ji Huan. He wore an expensive suit despite the early hour. His expression was calm, almost amused. He walked toward the gate with his hands visible at his sides. The universal sign of someone who came to talk, not fight. He's alone, Tae-sung said. Min-jae's jaw tightened. No, he's not. Scan the perimeter. He didn't come here without backup. Tae-sung issued orders into his radio. On the monitor, Ji Huan stopped 10 meters from the gate. He looked directly at the camera and smiled. Then he pulled out his phone. Min Jae's phone buzzed 3 seconds later. He glanced at the screen. His expression went cold. "What does it say?" Maria asked. Min Jae turned the phone toward her. "Come talk, or I'll assume you're too afraid." Maria's pulse kicked. "Don't," she said. "I have to." "It's a trap." "Probably." Min Jae pocketed his phone. "But if I hide behind reinforced walls, he wins. He proves I'm scared, that he got under my skin, that you matter enough to make me emotional. So you're going to walk out there and give him exactly what he wants?" "No, I'm going to walk out there and prove I'm still in control." He headed toward the door. Maria grabbed his arm. "Min Jae." He stopped, turned, looked down at her hand on his sleeve like he was memorizing the sight. "Stay inside," he said quietly. "No matter what happens, no matter what you hear, stay behind these walls until I come back. And if you don't come back, then Taesung will get you out of the country before Ji Hwan's men breach the compound." The words landed like a punch. Maria's throat tightened. "You're serious?" "Completely. I won't leave without you." Something cracked behind Min Jae's composure. He pulled her against him and kissed her hard, desperate and possessive and final, in a way that made her heart stutter. When he pulled back, his eyes were dark. "Yes, you will," he said quietly. "Because if I die out there, the only thing that matters is making sure you survive." He released her and walked out of the dining room before she could respond. Maria stood frozen while her pulse hammered against her ribs. Then she ran to the nearest window. The front courtyard was visible from this angle. She watched Min Jae cross the stone driveway flanked by 4 armed guards. Taesung walked half a step behind with his hand resting on his sidearm. They stopped at the gate. Ji Hwan stood on the opposite side, still smiling. The 2 men stared at each other through reinforced steel bars. Then Ji Hwan spoke. Maria couldn't hear the words, but she saw Min Jae's shoulders tighten. The conversation lasted exactly 3 minutes. Then Ji Hwan turned and walked back to his sedan. He paused before climbing inside, looked directly at the window where Maria stood watching, and smiled. Maria's blood turned to ice. He knew exactly where she was. The sedan pulled away and disappeared down the mountain road. Min Jae stood at the gate for another 30 seconds before turning and heading back toward the manor. His expression was unreadable. Maria met him in the entry hall. "What did he say?" she demanded. Min Jae brushed past her without answering. She followed him to his office, a converted library on the first floor with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and a massive desk that looked like it had been carved from a single piece of dark wood. He crossed to the desk and braced his hands against the surface. His shoulders were rigid, his breathing too controlled. "Min Jae," Maria said quietly. "He knows about the warehouse." "Of course he knows. You burned it down." He said it was an opening move, that he expected better from me. Min Jae straightened and turned to face her. "Then he told me how easy it would be to kill you." Maria's stomach dropped. "He described 17 different ways to get past my security. 17 vulnerabilities I didn't know existed. Sniper positions, blind spots in the camera coverage, guard rotation patterns." Min Jae's voice was flat, emotionless. "He laid out a blueprint for how to take you from me, and there was nothing I could do except stand there and listen." He was bluffing. He wasn't. How do you know? Because 3 of the vulnerabilities he mentioned are things only someone inside my organization would know. The words hung between them. Maria's pulse kicked. "You have a leak." "Yes." "Someone close enough to know guard rotations and security protocols." "Yes." "Who?" "I don't know yet, but I will." Min Jae crossed to the window and stared out at the forest beyond. "Ji Hwan's playing a long game. He's not trying to take you. He's trying to make me paranoid, make me doubt everyone around me, dismantle my operation from the inside before he ever fires a shot." "So what do we do?" I lock down harder. "Vet everyone, root out the leak and eliminate it." "And me?" Min Jae turned. "You stay here, with guards outside your door. No contact with anyone except me and Taesung." "I'm already a prisoner." "You're alive." "Same thing." "No." He crossed the room in 3 strides and grabbed her shoulders. "One keeps you breathing, the other gets you killed. And I will lock you in the basement myself before I let that happen." Maria stared up at him. "You can't control everything. Watch me." Min Jae, This conversation is over. He released her and headed toward the door. Where are you going? Maria demanded. To find out who betrayed me. He left without another word. Maria stood alone in the office while her heart hammered against her ribs and the walls of her gilded cage closed in tighter. The rest of the day passed in agonizing slowness. Maria was confined to the second floor with armed guards stationed outside her bedroom door. Mrs. Choi brought meals on a tray and asked no questions. Through the windows, Maria watched men move through the compound with increasing urgency. Reinforcements arrived by helicopter every few hours. The perimeter lights stayed on even after dark. Min-jae didn't come to see her. By midnight, Maria was ready to climb the walls. She changed into dark leggings and a black sweater, then eased open her bedroom door. The guard outside straightened immediately. I need to see Min-jae, she said. He's in the war room. He left orders not to be disturbed. I don't care about his orders. The guard's expression didn't change. I'm sorry, Mrs. Kang. I can't let you leave this floor. Maria stared at him. You're serious? Yes, ma'am. He's keeping me prisoner. He's keeping you safe. It's the same thing. No, ma'am. It's not. Maria slammed the door and paced her room like a caged animal. Her pulse hammered, her hands shook. She felt the walls pressing in from all sides. This was what she had agreed to: isolation, protection, a life lived behind reinforced steel while Min-jae fought a war she couldn't see. She lasted another hour. Then she grabbed her phone and called him. He answered on the third ring. What's wrong? Let me out. Silence. Maria, I can't breathe up here. I can't think. I feel like I'm suffocating. You're safe. I'm going insane. More silence. Then, I'll be up in 10 minutes. He disconnected. Maria sat on the edge of the bed and counted her heartbeats until she heard footsteps in the hallway. The door opened. Min-jae stood in the doorway looking like he had aged 10 years in 12 hours. His shirt was wrinkled. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. Blood stained his knuckles. Maria stood. What happened to your hands? I questioned people. Questioned or beat? Both. He stepped inside and closed the door behind him. I found the leak. Maria's breath caught. Who? One of my logistics coordinators. Ji Hwan had been paying him for 3 months to feed information about guard schedules and security protocols. Min-jae's voice was flat. He's been dealt with. Dealt with how? Do you really want to know? No. Yes. I put a bullet in his head and dumped his body in the river. The words were delivered with the same tone he used to discuss dinner menus. Maria's stomach turned over. Min-jae saw her expression and something flickered across his face. This is what I am. This is what I do. And if that's too much for you, I'll have Tae-sung arrange transport back to Seoul tomorrow and you can file for divorce. Is that what you want? What I want doesn't matter. It matters to me. Min-jae crossed to the window and braced his hands against the frame. I killed a man tonight, shot him in the head while he begged for his life, and I didn't feel anything except relief that the leak was plugged. You felt something, Maria said quietly, or you wouldn't be up here telling me about it. Guilt isn't the same as regret. No, but it means you're still human. He laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. I stopped being human a long time ago. Maria crossed the room and wrapped her arms around him from behind. She pressed her cheek against his back and felt the tension coiled in his shoulders. You're human, she whispered. You're just scared. Min-jae's hands covered hers where they rested against his chest. I'm terrified, he admitted quietly. Ji Hwan knows about the leak now, which means he knows I'm vulnerable, that I'm making emotional decisions, that you matter enough to make me sloppy. So we leave. We get on a plane and disappear. Where? He has reach in 15 countries, assets on 4 continents, the kind of connections that make borders meaningless. Then we fight. You're not a fighter. Neither were you once. Min-jae turned in her arms. Yes, I was. I've been fighting since I was 15 years old and watched my father get executed in an alley because he chose honor over survival. I learned that day that good men die young and monsters live forever, so I became the thing people fear. And now? Now I'm realizing that being feared doesn't mean being untouchable. He kissed her then. slow and desperate and final in a way that made her heart stutter. When they broke apart, his eyes were dark. "I need you to promise me something," he said quietly. "What?" "If this goes wrong, if Ji Huan gets past my defenses and comes for you, I need you to run. Don't wait for me. Don't try to fight. Just run and don't look back." "I won't leave you. Maria—" "No." She grabbed his face. "You don't get to ask me to run. You don't get to play hero and sacrifice yourself. We're in this together or not at all." "You don't understand what you're asking. I understand perfectly. You want me safe even if it means you die. But I'd rather fight beside you and lose than live without you and win." Min-jae stared at her for a long moment. Then he kissed her again. Harder this time, possessive, like he was trying to brand the taste of her into his memory before something took it away. They made it to the bed without breaking apart. Clothes disappeared in desperate handfuls. 18 months of restraint shattered completely. Min-jae touched her like a man memorizing every curve, every sigh, every gasp. Maria pulled him closer and let herself drown in sensation. Afterward, they lay tangled together while their breathing slowed and reality crept back in through the edges. Min-jae traced patterns across her shoulder with his fingertips. "I should go," he said quietly. "Taesung is waiting for orders." "Stay." "Maria, please." He stayed. They fell asleep wrapped around each other while armed guards patrolled the hallways and Ji Hwan's threat hung over them like a blade waiting to drop. Maria woke to the sound of gunfire. She sat up so fast her vision blurred. Min-jae was already moving, rolling out of bed and grabbing his gun from the nightstand in one fluid motion. He was dressed and armed in under 30 seconds. "Stay here," he ordered. "What's happening?" "They're breaching the perimeter." More gunfire erupted from somewhere below. Shouts echoed through the manor. Boots pounded against stone. Min-jae's radio crackled. "Boss, we've got at least 20 hostiles coming through the forest. They hit us with explosives to take out the east gate. We're falling back to secondary positions." "Hold them," Min-jae snapped. "I'm on my way." He turned to Maria. "Lock this door behind me. Don't open it for anyone except me or Taesung. If you hear fighting, get close. Barricade yourself in the bathroom." "Min-jae," he kissed her hard. "I love you. Remember that." Then he was gone. Maria heard the lock click from the outside. She stood frozen in the center of the bedroom while gunfire tore through the night and her heart tried to hammer its way out of her chest. This was it. The moment Min-jae had been preparing for. The moment Ji Hwan stopped playing games and came for blood. Maria grabbed her phone with shaking hands. No signal. They had jammed communications. She crossed to the window and looked down at the courtyard. Chaos. Armed men in black tactical gear poured through the shattered east gate. Min-jae's guards returned fire from defensive positions behind stone walls and overturned vehicles. Muzzle flashes lit the darkness like lightning. Then the lights went out. The entire compound plunged into darkness. Emergency generators kicked on 10 seconds later, bathing everything in red emergency lighting. Maria's pulse hammered. She heard footsteps pounding up the stairs. Then voices in the hallway. Korean. Shouting orders. Gunfire exploded right outside her door. Someone screamed, then silence. Maria backed away from the door until her spine hit the wall. The doorknob rattled, once, twice, then a fist pounded against the wood. "Maria!" Taesung's voice. She ran to the door and unlocked it. Taesung stood in the hallway covered in blood and breathing hard. Two of Min-jae's guards lay dead at his feet. "We need to move," he said. "Now." "Where's Min-jae?" "Holding the courtyard. He sent me to get you out." "I'm not leaving without him." "You don't have a choice." Taesung grabbed her arm. "Ji Hwan's men are inside the manor. If we don't move now, we're both dead." Before Maria could respond, an explosion tore through the first floor. The entire building shook. Dust rained from the ceiling. Taesung pulled her toward the stairs. "Go! Move!" They ran. Down the hallway, past bodies, through smoke that burned her lungs and made her eyes water. They made it to the first floor before armed men in black tactical gear rounded the corner. Taesung shoved Maria behind him and opened fire. The hallway exploded with gunfire and screaming. Maria pressed herself against the wall and tried not to look at the bodies dropping around her. Taesung emptied his clip and ejected the magazine. "Run," he ordered. "What about you?" "I'll hold them." Get to the garage. There's a vehicle with keys in the ignition. Drive until you hit the main road, then call the emergency number in the glove box. Tae-sung, go! Go! Maria ran. Behind her, Tae-sung reloaded and started firing again. She made it to the garage and found the vehicle exactly where he said, a black SUV with the engine already running. She climbed into the driver's seat, slammed the door, threw the vehicle into reverse. The garage door exploded inward. Men poured through the opening. Maria floored the accelerator. The SUV shot backward out of the garage and fishtailed across the courtyard. Bullets sparked off the armored panels. The windshield spiderwebbed but didn't shatter. Maria cranked the wheel and shifted into drive. Then she saw him. Min Jae, surrounded by 6 men in the center of the courtyard. He was fighting like a cornered animal, brutal and efficient and outnumbered. Maria's heart stopped. She turned the wheel, aimed the SUV directly at the cluster of men, and slammed her foot on the accelerator. The SUV hit the group like a battering ram. Bodies flew. Maria cranked the wheel and the vehicle skidded to a stop beside Min Jae. She threw open the passenger door. Get in! Min Jae stared at her like she had lost her mind. What the hell are you doing? Saving you. Get in the car. More gunfire erupted from the manor. Min Jae dove into the passenger seat. Maria floored it before he even closed the door. The SUV shot forward and crashed through what remained of the east gate. Trees blurred past. The road twisted down the mountain in hairpin turns that made her stomach lurch. Behind them, headlights appeared. Pursuit vehicles. They're following us, Maria said. Min Jae twisted in his seat and fired through the shattered back window. One of the pursuing vehicles swerved and crashed into a tree. 2 more kept coming. Maria took a curve too fast and the SUV's tires screamed in protest. Slow down, Min Jae ordered. They'll catch us. If you crash, we're both dead. Slow down and let me handle them. Maria eased off the accelerator. Min Jae leaned out the window and fired in controlled bursts. The second pursuit vehicle's windshield exploded. It veered off the road and tumbled down the mountainside in a shower of sparks and screaming metal. The third vehicle closed the distance, rammed them from behind. The SUV lurched forward. Maria fought to keep control. Min Jae reloaded. The pursuit vehicle rammed them again. This time, the impact sent the SUV into a spin. Maria's world tilted. The vehicle slid sideways toward the edge of the cliff. Time slowed. She saw the drop, saw the darkness beyond the road, saw death rushing up to meet them. Then the tires caught traction. The SUV lurched to a stop 3 feet from the edge. The pursuit vehicle wasn't as lucky. It shot past them and launched off the cliff, disappeared into darkness. The impact echoed up from the ravine seconds later. Maria sat frozen behind the wheel while her hands shook and her pulse thundered in her ears. Min Jae reached over and put the vehicle in drive. Move, he said quietly. Maria's foot found the accelerator. They drove in silence for 20 minutes before Min Jae finally spoke. You were supposed to run. I don't follow orders well. You could have been killed. So could you. He stared at her. You came back for me. Of course I did. Why? Maria's hands tightened on the wheel. Because I love you. The words hung between them. Min Jae's expression cracked. He reached over and pulled her hand from the wheel long enough to press his lips against her knuckles. I love you too, he whispered, and that's exactly why you should have left me behind. Well, too bad. You're stuck with me now. Despite everything, the blood, the bodies, the compound burning behind them, Min Jae almost smiled. They drove until dawn broke gold across the horizon, until the mountain road flattened into highway, until Seoul's skyline appeared in the distance like a promise of civilization and safety. But Maria knew the truth. Safety was an illusion. Ji-hwan was still out there, still hunting, still determined to destroy the man she loved, and now there was nowhere left to hide. The safe house was buried in Seoul's industrial district, where nobody asked questions and surveillance cameras had been blind for years. Maria followed Min Jae through a rusted steel door into a warehouse that smelled like oil and decay. Inside, the space had been converted into something functional. Reinforced walls, generator-powered lights, enough weapons stockpiled to arm a small militia. Min Jae's remaining men were already there, 5 of them, blood-stained, exhausted. The survivors of a massacre that had cost him 30 soldiers in a single night. Tae-sung wasn't among them. Maria's chest tightened. Where's Taesung? Min Jae's jaw worked. Dead. He held the hallway long enough for you to escape. The words landed like a physical blow. Maria pressed her hand against the wall to steady herself while the room tilted sideways. She had barely known the man, had spoken maybe 20 words to him total, but he had died buying her time to run, had died because she mattered to Min Jae. The guilt tasted like copper. Min Jae crossed to a steel table covered in maps and surveillance photos. His movements were mechanical, controlled. But Maria could see the exhaustion carved into every line of his face. How many did we lose? One of the men asked quietly. 32 confirmed, another 6 unaccounted for. Min Jae's voice was flat. Ji-hwan brought at least 40 men, military-grade weapons, explosives. He wasn't trying to send a message. He was trying to eliminate us completely. So what's the play? We regroup, fortify this location, then we hit back twice as hard. Maria watched him orchestrate the response with the same cold precision he had used to plan their escape. Assigning guard rotations, checking weapon inventories, issuing orders to men who looked ready to drop from exhaustion. He was still fighting, still refusing to accept defeat, still convinced he could win a war that was bleeding him dry one soldier at a time. 2 hours later, the remaining men dispersed to assigned positions throughout the warehouse. Maria found Min Jae standing alone in what passed for a kitchen, a corner with a hot plate and a rusted sink. He was washing blood off his hands. The water ran pink down the drain. Minji, she said quietly. He didn't turn. You should rest. There's a cot in the back room. I'm not tired. You were awake all night. So were you. His hands stilled beneath the water. I can't afford to rest. You can't afford to collapse either. I'll sleep when Ji-hwan is dead. Maria crossed the space between them. How long are you going to keep doing this? Doing what? Pretending you're not falling apart. Min Jae finally turned to look at her. Up close, she could see the cracks in his composure, the dark circles beneath his eyes, the tension carved into his jaw, the way his hands trembled slightly before he forced them still. I'm fine, he said. You're lying. I don't have the luxury of falling apart. 32 men died last night because I underestimated Ji-hwan, because I let emotion cloud my judgment, because I convinced myself reinforced walls and armed guards could protect you from a man who has spent his entire life dismantling obstacles. His voice dropped. So no, I don't get to collapse. I don't get to grieve. I get to finish this before anyone else dies because of me. This isn't your fault. It's entirely my fault. I started a war over you, and now people are paying the price. The words cut deeper than any blade. Maria stepped back. You regret it. What? You regret choosing me over strategy, regret letting yourself care. Min Jae stared at her like she had struck him. That's not what I said. It's what you meant. No. What I meant is that I'm terrified I'm going to get you killed, that I'll make the wrong call and you'll pay for it with your life. That's not the same as regret. Feels pretty similar from where I'm standing. Min Jae crossed the kitchen in 2 strides and grabbed her shoulders. Listen to me. The only thing I regret is not killing Ji-hwan the first time he looked at you. Everything else, every choice I've made, every line I've crossed, every man I've lost, I would do it all again if it meant keeping you alive. Maria's throat tightened. Even if it destroys you? Especially then. He kissed her hard, desperate, like he was trying to memorize the taste of her before something ripped them apart. When they broke apart, both of them were breathing hard. Min Jae's phone buzzed. He pulled it from his pocket and his expression went cold. What is it? Maria asked. He turned the screen toward her. A video file. The thumbnail showed a warehouse interior, concrete walls, dim lighting, a figure bound to a chair. Maria's stomach dropped. She recognized the location even before Min Jae hit play. The video started. The camera focused on the bound figure. A man, early 60s, gray hair, expensive suit torn and bloodstained. Maria's father. Her knees buckled. Min Jae caught her before she hit the floor. His arm locked around her waist, holding her upright while the video continued playing. Seo Ji-hwan stepped into frame. He looked exactly as he had at the charity gala. Immaculate suit, calm expression, the kind of composure that came from complete control. Kang Min Jae, he said to the camera. His voice was smooth, cultured. I assume you're watching this with your lovely wife. Hello, Maria. I'm sorry we didn't get to finish our conversation at the gala. You seemed delightful. On screen, Maria's father struggled against his restraints. Duct tape covered his mouth. Ji-hwan continued. I've been patient. I've played the long game. I've given you every opportunity to walk away from this escalation. But you refused. You burned my warehouses, killed my men, declared war over a woman you barely know. He smiled. So now I'm returning the favor. He pulled a pistol from inside his jacket, pressed it against the back of Maria's father's head. You have 24 hours to turn yourself in, Ji-hwan said calmly. Come to the address I'm sending after this video. Come alone, unarmed, and I'll let him live. Maria's father was screaming behind the tape. His eyes were wide with terror. If you don't come, Ji-hwan continued, I'll kill him, slowly, painfully, and I'll send you pieces of his body until you change your mind. He tilted his head. 24 hours, Min-jae. Choose wisely. The video ended. Maria couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Her father, bound, terrified, hours away from execution, because of her. Because she had smiled at Ji-hwan at a charity gala and triggered a war she didn't understand. Min-jae's phone buzzed again. An address appeared on the screen, a warehouse in the Port District, the same district where Ji-hwan operated his smuggling empire. Maria grabbed Min-jae's arm. We have to go. We have to save him. No. The word was flat, final. Maria stared. What? It's a trap. Ji-hwan knows I won't sacrifice an innocent man. He's using your father as bait to draw me out in the open where he can kill me. So we just let my father die? I didn't say that. Then what are you saying? Min-jae set his phone down and turned to face her fully. I'm saying we have 24 hours to plan an extraction that doesn't get all three of us killed. There's no time to plan. He could execute him any minute. He won't. Not until the deadline passes. Ji-hwan is strategic. He wants me desperate and emotional, rushing in without thinking, making mistakes. Min-jae's expression was carved from stone. So I'm not going to give him what he wants. Maria's hands curled into fists. That's my father. I know. He's terrified. I know. And you're just going to stand here and plan while he sits in that warehouse waiting to die? Yes. The single word detonated something inside Maria's chest. She shoved him, hard. Min-jae barely moved. You promised you'd protect him, she said. Her voice cracked. When you married me, you promised my father would be safe, that the deal would clear his debts and give him security. You gave me your word. And I've kept it for 18 months. Until now. Until now, Min-jae agreed quietly. Because Ji-hwan escalated this beyond business deals and political marriages. He made it personal. And the second he took your father, he proved he'll do anything to get to me. So we give him what he wants. You mean I turn myself over and let him execute me? I mean we negotiate. There's nothing to negotiate. Ji-hwan doesn't want money or territory or compromise. He wants me dead and my empire dismantled. Your father is just leverage. Maria's vision blurred. Please. The word came out broken. Min-jae's expression cracked, just for a second. A flicker of pain too raw to hide. Then the mask slammed back into place. I will get your father out, he said quietly. But I'm doing it my way, on my timeline, with a plan that doesn't end with all of us dead. And if you're wrong, if Ji-hwan kills him before your 24 hours are up, then I'll live with that, the same way I live with every other death I've caused. The words were meant to sound cold, detached. But Maria heard the truth beneath them, heard the exhaustion, the fear, the desperate hope that he could somehow save everyone, and knowing he probably couldn't. She turned away from him before the tears could fall. I need air, she said. Maria, don't. She walked out of the kitchen before he could stop her. The warehouse was cold, dark, filled with the mechanical hum of generators and the quiet murmur of men speaking in low voices. Maria found a corner near the back where shadows swallowed everything, and she could finally let herself break. She pressed her back against the concrete wall and slid down until she was sitting on the floor. Then she cried. For her father. For Tae-sung. For the 32 men who had died defending a marriage that was supposed to be strategy and nothing more. For the man she loved who was slowly destroying himself trying to protect her. She didn't hear Min Jae approach until he was crouching in front of her. He didn't speak, just reached out and pulled her against his chest. Maria collapsed into him. Her fingers twisted in his shirt while she sobbed against his shoulder, and he held her like she was the only thing keeping him anchored to earth. "I'm sorry," he whispered against her hair. "I'm so sorry." "Don't apologize, just save him." "I will. Promise me." Min Jae pulled back just enough to meet her eyes. His face was wrecked, raw in a way she had never seen. "I promise," he said. "I will get your father out alive or I will die trying." The conviction in his voice should have been comforting. Instead, it terrified her, because she knew Min Jae well enough by now to understand what he wasn't saying, that he would trade his life for her father's without hesitation, that he saw this as penance for dragging her into his world, that he was already planning his own sacrifice. "Don't you dare," Maria said. "Don't what?" "Don't trade yourself for him. Don't play hero. Don't leave me." Min Jae's hands came up to cup her face. "I'm not leaving you. You're lying." "Maria, I see it in your eyes. You've already decided. You're going to walk into that warehouse and surrender yourself to save my father." Her voice broke. "And you think I'll forgive you for it, because he's my father. But I won't. If you die, I will never forgive you." Something cracked behind Min Jae's composure. He kissed her desperately, like a man saying goodbye. When he pulled back, his eyes were dark. "I love you," he said quietly, "and that means keeping you whole, even if it destroys me." Before Maria could respond, one of Min Jae's men appeared in the doorway. "Boss, we have a problem." Min Jae stood and pulled Maria to her feet. "What kind of problem?" "The video Ji-hwan sent? Our tech guy traced the metadata. It wasn't filmed at the Port District warehouse." Min Jae went still. "Then where?" "Here, in Seoul. Less than 3 kilometers from this location." Ice slid down Maria's spine. "Show me," Min Jae ordered. They followed the man to a laptop set up on the steel table. The screen displayed a map of Seoul with a red pin marking a location in the warehouse district, less than 2 miles away. Min Jae's jaw tightened. "He's close." "Too close," the man agreed. "He wants us to know he's nearby, that he can strike whenever he wants. Or he's trying to draw us out." Min Jae studied the map. "What's at that location?" "Abandoned textile factory. Been empty for 5 years. No security, no cameras. Perfect place to hold a hostage. Or set a trap." "Yes, sir." Min Jae was quiet for a long moment. Then he turned to Maria. "Stay here," he said. "I'm going to scout the location." "Alone?" "With 2 men. Quick reconnaissance. In and out before Ji-hwan knows we're there." "And if it's a trap?" "Then we'll know for sure." Maria grabbed his arm. "This is exactly what he wants. You rushing in emotional and desperate." "I'm not rushing. I'm gathering intelligence." "You're lying to yourself." Min Jae pulled free of her grip. "I don't have time to argue. Your father has less than 20 hours before the deadline. I need to know what we're walking into." He headed toward the door. Maria watched him go while her pulse hammered and fear clawed up her throat. This was wrong. Everything about this felt wrong, but she didn't know how to stop it. Min Jae left with 2 armed men 90 seconds later. The warehouse fell into tense silence. Maria paced the concrete floor while minutes crawled past like hours. She checked her phone obsessively, even though she knew Min Jae wouldn't call until he had something to report. 15 minutes? 30? 45. Her phone finally buzzed. She grabbed it so fast she nearly dropped it. Unknown number. Maria's stomach dropped. She answered anyway. "Hello?" "Hello, Maria." Seo Ji-hwan's voice, smooth, cultured, amused. Maria's blood turned to ice. "Where's Min Jae?" "Right here with me. Would you like to speak to him?" There was a rustling sound. Then Min Jae's voice, rough, strained. "Maria, don't..." The sound cut off abruptly, like someone had hit him. Maria's vision blurred. "What did you do?" "Nothing permanent? Yet." Ji-hwan sounded almost apologetic. "Your husband is quite resourceful. He managed to identify my location and mount a reconnaissance mission in under an hour. Very impressive. Let him go." "I'm afraid I can't do that. You see, I've been very patient. I've tried to negotiate. I've tried to demonstrate superior force. I've tried to make him understand that this war is unwinnable, but he refused to listen. So now I'm changing tactics. What do you want? The same thing I've always wanted. Min Jae's complete surrender, his empire, his assets, his territory. Ji-hwan paused. And you? Maria's pulse hammered. Me? Of course. You're the reason he's been making emotional decisions, the weakness I can exploit. Take you away from him, and he becomes predictable again, manageable. He'll never surrender. Oh, I think he will, because I have something he values more than his pride. Ji-hwan's voice dropped. I have you. Before Maria could process the words, the warehouse door exploded inward. Men in black tactical gear poured through the opening. Maria's guards opened fire. The warehouse erupted into chaos. Gunfire, screaming, smoke grenades hissing across the concrete. Maria ran for the back exit. A figure stepped into her path. She tried to dodge. Strong hands grabbed her arms. She screamed and fought. Something sharp jabbed into her neck. Cold spread through her veins. Her vision blurred. The last thing she saw before darkness swallowed her completely was Ji-hwan standing in the doorway of the warehouse, smiling like the devil who had been pulling strings all along. Maria woke to the smell of salt water and rust. Her head throbbed. Her mouth tasted like copper. Her hands were bound behind her back with zip ties that cut into her wrists. She blinked against harsh fluorescent lighting and tried to focus. Concrete floor, metal walls. The rhythmic slap of waves against a hull. She was on a ship. No. A barge. Docked somewhere in Seoul's port district, if the city lights visible through a grimy porthole were any indication. Voices echoed from somewhere beyond the metal door. Korean. Low. Urgent. Maria tested the zip ties. Too tight. No give. The door opened. Seo Ji-hwan stepped inside. He looked exactly as he had in every encounter. Immaculate suit, calm expression, hands clasped behind his back like a professor about to deliver a lecture. You're awake, he said pleasantly. Good. I was beginning to worry I'd miscalculated the dosage. Maria's voice came out rough. Where's Min Jae? Alive. For now. Ji-hwan crossed to a metal chair and sat down facing her. He's quite frantic, actually. It's fascinating to watch. I've known him for years and I've never seen him lose control. But the moment I sent him proof that I had you, he started making mistakes. What proof? Ji-hwan pulled out his phone and turned it toward her. A photo filled the screen. Maria, unconscious. Zip-tied. Being carried through the warehouse by armed men. Below it, a message timestamp, 45 minutes ago. He's already sent 3 separate messages offering to trade himself for your release, Ji-hwan said. I haven't responded yet. I'm enjoying watching him spiral. Maria's throat tightened. What do you want? I already told you, his complete surrender. He'll never give you that. He will if the alternative is watching you die. Ji-hwan leaned forward. Do you know why I chose you, Maria? Out of all the people in Min Jae's organization I could have targeted? Because I'm his wife. No. Because you're his humanity. The one thing that makes him vulnerable. The one weakness I can exploit to dismantle everything he's built. Ji-hwan smiled. He spent 15 years turning himself into a machine. Cold, efficient, ruthless. And then you walked into his life and reminded him what it felt like to care about something more than power. That's not a weakness. In this world, it absolutely is. The door opened again. 2 men dragged someone inside. Maria's heart stopped. Her father. He looked worse than he had in the video. Bruised, bloodied, barely conscious. They dropped him on the concrete beside Maria. He groaned. Dad, Maria whispered. His eyes fluttered open. When he saw her, something between relief and horror crossed his face. Maria, no, you shouldn't be here. I'm okay. This is my fault. I'm so sorry. Don't, this isn't your fault. Ji-hwan watched the exchange with clinical interest. Touching. But we're running out of time. Min Jae has exactly 12 hours to surrender himself, or I start sending him pieces of both of you. Maria's pulse kicked. You're a coward. Ji-hwan's expression didn't change. I'm strategic. There's a difference. You can't beat him, not in a fair fight. So you resort to taking hostages and threatening innocent people. Innocent? Ji-hwan laughed. Your father borrowed money from 3 separate criminal organizations to cover gambling debts. When he couldn't pay, he sold you to Min Jae to clear the balance. He's many things, Maria, but innocent isn't one of them. Maria's world tilted. She turned to look at her father. He wouldn't meet her eyes. Dad, she whispered, tell me he's lying. Her father's silence was answer enough. The truth crashed over her like a wave. Her marriage hadn't been about saving her father from bankruptcy. It had been about saving him from execution. He had gambled away money he didn't have, borrowed from people who didn't forgive debts, and when they came to collect, he had traded his daughter to the most dangerous man in Seoul to buy himself more time. You sold me, Maria said quietly. I had no choice. There's always a choice. They were going to kill me. Her father's voice broke. I was desperate. Min Jae offered me a way out. I thought you'd be safe with him, that he'd protect you. So you lied. You let me believe I was saving you from financial ruin when really I was just another transaction. I'm sorry. The apology meant nothing. Maria turned away from him and stared at the grimy porthole while her entire understanding of the last 18 months shattered and reformed into something uglier. Her marriage had been built on lies from the beginning. Her father had never needed saving. He had just needed a daughter naive enough to sacrifice herself. Ji-hwan stood. I'll give you 2 some time to process. Min Jae should be arriving soon. I've sent him the address. He left the room. The door locked behind him. Maria and her father sat in silence while the barge rocked gently and the city lights beyond the porthole burned like distant stars. I'm sorry, her father said again. Maria didn't respond. Because what was there to say? That she forgave him? She didn't. That she understood? She didn't. That it didn't matter? It did. Her entire marriage, the distance, the separate bedrooms, Min Jae's careful restraint, suddenly made horrible sense. He had known from the beginning that she was a transaction, payment for a debt her father owed to men who traded in violence and fear. And he had kept his distance because he understood what she was too naive to see. That she was property, not a wife, not a partner, just collateral in a deal between criminals. The worst part was that somewhere along the way, Min Jae had stopped treating her like property and started treating her like something precious, had fallen for her despite knowing exactly how she ended up in his life, had chosen to love her even though it made him vulnerable, and now he was walking into a trap to save her and the father who had sold her in the first place. 2 hours crawled past, then voices echoed from beyond the door. Korean, sharp, urgent. The door opened. Seo Ji-hwan entered flanked by armed guards. Behind them walked Kang Min Jae. Unarmed, hands raised, blood staining his shirt from a wound Maria couldn't identify. His eyes found hers immediately. Relief and rage and something darker crashed across his face. Let her go, he said quietly. Not yet. Ji-hwan gestured to his men. Restrain him. The guards grabbed Min Jae's arms and forced him to his knees beside Maria. Up close she could see the damage, split lip, bruised jaw, the kind of injuries that came from interrogation. Are you hurt? He asked. Maria shook her head. Min Jae's gaze shifted to her father. His expression went cold. You knew, Maria said quietly. Min Jae looked back at her. Knew what? About the gambling debts. About him selling me to clear them. You knew from the beginning. Something flickered across Min Jae's face. Not surprise, not shame, just exhaustion. Yes, he said. I knew. And you married me anyway. Yes. Why? Because the alternative was letting him get executed in an alley, and you would have blamed yourself for the rest of your life. The words landed like a physical blow. Maria stared at him while her pulse hammered and her world continued to splinter into smaller and smaller pieces. So you saved him, she whispered, not because you needed political legitimacy, because you didn't want me to carry that guilt. Yes. And you never told me. No. Why? Min Jae's expression was carved from stone. Because knowing wouldn't have changed anything except how you saw yourself. And I wasn't going to let his mistakes destroy you. Ji-hwan watched the exchange with clinical interest. Touching. But we're wasting time. I have a deal to propose. He pulled a pistol from inside his jacket. pressed it against the back of Maria's father's head. Here's how this works, Jihuan said calmly. You sign over control of your operations to me. Territory, assets, political connections, everything. And I let all three of you walk away. Min-jae's jaw tightened. And if I refuse, I kill him, then her, then you, in that order. Do it. The words came from Maria's father. Everyone turned to stare. He was looking at Min-jae with something between resignation and shame in his eyes. Don't give him anything, Maria's father said quietly. I'm not worth it. I've never been worth it. Just let him kill me and get Maria out. No, Maria said. I'm sorry, sweetheart. For everything. For the gambling, for the lies, for selling you to pay my debts. I was a coward. I still am. Her father's voice broke. But I won't let you die because of my mistakes. Jihuan pressed the gun harder against his skull. How noble. But I'm afraid the decision isn't yours. He looked at Min-jae. What's it going to be? Min-jae stared at the gun, at Maria's father, at Maria. His expression was unreadable. Then he smiled. It was the coldest thing Maria had ever seen. You made a mistake, Min-jae said quietly. Jihuan frowned. Excuse me? You assumed I came alone. You did. No, I came first. My men came second. Jihuan's expression shifted. Too late. The barge shuddered violently. An explosion tore through the hull below the waterline. Water began flooding the cargo hold. Jihuan's men scattered toward the exits. In the chaos, Min-jae drove his shoulder into the guard nearest him. The man stumbled. Min-jae grabbed the pistol from his holster and fired twice. Both guards dropped. Jihuan spun and raised his weapon. Min-jae was faster. The shot echoed across the cargo hold. Jihuan's gun clattered to the floor. He staggered backward, clutching his shoulder while blood spread across his perfect suit. Min-jae rose to his feet, crossed the space between them in 3 strides, put the gun against Jihuan's forehead. You touched what belongs to me, he said quietly. Then he pulled the trigger. The body dropped. Min-jae turned away before it hit the ground. He cut Maria's zip ties with a knife from one of the dead guards, then did the same for her father. Move, he ordered. They ran, through flooding corridors, past bodies, up rusted stairs toward the deck. The barge was sinking fast. They made it topside just as the stern dipped below the waterline. A speedboat waited 50 meters away. Min-jae's men. Min-jae grabbed Maria and jumped. They hit the water hard. Cold shocked through her system. Strong hands grabbed her arms and hauled her into the speedboat. Her father surfaced beside them. Min-jae pulled himself aboard last. The speedboat roared away from the sinking barge, while armed men on the dock opened fire. Bullets sparked off the water, but they were already out of range. Maria collapsed against the deck while her lungs burned and her pulse hammered, and the world slowly stopped spinning. They had survived. Barely. But the war was finally over. Seo Ji-hwan was dead, and Maria was left staring at the man she loved while one terrible truth crystallized in her mind. Min-jae had known from the beginning that her father had sold her, had married her anyway, had kept the secret for 18 months, had let her believe she was saving her father when really he was saving her from the truth. And she didn't know if that made him her savior or just another man who saw her as something to protect instead of an equal. The speedboat docked at a private pier on the outskirts of Seoul. Min-jae's remaining men secured the area while Maria and her father were hustled into a waiting vehicle. Min-jae slid into the seat beside her. His shirt was soaked. Blood and water mixed across the fabric, but his eyes were clear, focused, alive. It's over, he said quietly. Maria stared at him. Is it? Min-jae frowned. Ji-hwan is dead. His organization will fracture without leadership. The threat is eliminated. I'm not talking about Ji-hwan. Then what are you talking about? Maria's hands curled into fists in her lap. You lied to me. I protected you. You decided what I could handle without asking me. Because telling you would have destroyed you. That wasn't your choice to make. Min-jae's jaw tightened. Yes, it was. The moment I married you, it became my job to protect you, even from the truth. I didn't need protection. I needed honesty. Honesty would have broken you. You don't know that. Yes, I do. Because I've spent 18 months watching you, learning you, understanding you. And I knew from the beginning that if you ever found out your father sold you, it would shatter everything you believed about yourself. Min Jae's voice dropped. So I kept the secret, and I would do it again. The vehicle pulled away from the pier. Maria turned to stare out the window while Seoul blurred past, and her entire world felt like it was built on foundations made of lies. Beside her, her father sat silent, ashamed, too late for apologies to matter. And beside him sat the man she loved, the man who had saved her twice, killed for her, nearly died for her. And she couldn't decide if she wanted to kiss him or never see him again. Because love built on deception wasn't love. It was just another cage. And Maria was so tired of living in cages. The vehicle pulled up to a nondescript apartment building in Gangnam where the windows were dark and the streets were empty at 4 in the morning. Min Jae exited first and scanned the perimeter with the practiced efficiency of a man who had survived 15 years by never trusting shadows. His remaining men fanned out to secure the entrances while Maria and her father were hustled inside. The apartment was a safe house. Temporary, functional. Nothing personal except for the weapons cabinet in the corner and the emergency medical kit on the kitchen counter. Maria's father collapsed onto the worn couch the moment they were inside. He looked 10 years older than he had a week ago. Hollowed out. Broken. Min Jae locked the door and engaged 3 separate deadbolts. Then he turned to face Maria. The silence between them was suffocating. Say it, Min Jae said quietly. Maria wrapped her arms around herself. Say what? Whatever you're thinking, whatever you've been holding back since the barge. Just say it. You want me to be honest? Yes. Fine. Maria's voice shook. I don't know if I can do this anymore. Min Jae went completely still. Do what? This. Us. A marriage built on secrets and violence and you making decisions about my life without ever asking me what I want. I saved your life. By lying to me for 18 months. By protecting you from a truth that would have destroyed you. Stop saying that. Maria's hands curled into fists. Stop acting like I'm some fragile thing that needs to be sheltered from reality. I'm not made of glass. I don't shatter every time something hurts. No. You just internalize it and carry it alone until it eats you alive. Min Jae crossed his arms. I've watched you, Maria. I've seen the way you blame yourself for things that aren't your fault. The way you carry guilt like a second skin. If I had told you that your father sold you to clear gambling debts, you would have spent the rest of your life wondering what you did to deserve it. That wasn't your decision to make. It absolutely was. The moment I married you, it became my responsibility to protect you, even from yourself. I didn't ask for your protection. You didn't have to. It came with the ring. The words landed like a slap. Maria stepped back. So that's what this is? An obligation? A duty you accepted when you signed the marriage contract? Min Jae's expression cracked. You know it's not, do I? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've spent 18 months treating me like a possession instead of a person, making choices for me, hiding information from me, deciding what I can and can't handle without ever once asking me what I actually want. What do you want? I want you to trust me. I do trust you. No, you don't. You trust yourself to protect me. That's not the same thing. The truth hung between them like a blade. Min Jae opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Then his phone buzzed. He pulled it from his pocket, and his expression went cold. What is it? Maria asked. Min Jae turned the screen toward her. A photo. The barge sinking into Seoul's harbor. Emergency vehicles flooding the docks. Police tape everywhere. Below it, a news headline in Korean. Min Jae translated quietly. Explosion in Port District leaves multiple casualties. Authorities suspect organized crime involvement. Investigation ongoing. They're going to connect it to you, Maria said. They already have. Min Jae scrolled through more messages. My contacts in the police department are saying there's pressure from the top to make arrests. Ji Hwan had political connections that went higher than mine. His death is going to trigger investigations I can't shut down. What does that mean? It means we have maybe 12 hours before they issue warrants. Maybe less if someone decides to make an example out of me. Maria's father spoke for the first time since they'd entered the apartment. His voice was hoarse, broken. Turn yourself in. Min-jae didn't even look at him. No. If you run, they'll hunt you forever. You'll never have a normal life, never be safe. I stopped having a normal life when I was 15 years old, and I gave up on safety the day I declared war on Ji-hwan. What about Maria? What about her? She deserves better than spending the rest of her life hiding from the law with a wanted criminal. Min-jae finally turned to look at Maria's father. His expression was carved from ice. You sold her to pay your gambling debts, he said quietly. You lied to her for 18 months. Let her believe she was saving you when really you were saving yourself. And now you want to lecture me about what she deserves? Maria's father flinched. I made mistakes, he whispered. You made choices. And the consequences of those choices are the reason we're all standing here right now. I know. Do you? Min-jae crossed the room until he was standing directly over the couch. Because from where I'm standing, you've spent the last week hiding behind your daughter, while better men died protecting you. Taesung is dead because I prioritized getting you out. 32 soldiers are dead because I declared war over your daughter's safety. So don't stand there and tell me what Maria deserves, when you've never once put her first. The words were brutal, true, devastating. Maria's father looked like he'd been struck. Min-jae, Maria said quietly. He turned. Don't, she said. Don't what? Don't tear him apart because you're angry at me. Min-jae stared at her. I'm not angry at you. Yes, you are. You're furious that I'm questioning you, that I'm not grateful you kept secrets from me, that I'm not falling at your feet thanking you for protecting me from the truth. That's not... It is exactly that. Maria stepped closer. You want me to choose you over everything else. Over honesty, over agency, over my own right to make informed decisions about my life. And you're angry that I won't. Min-jae's hands curled into fists at his sides. I want you alive. Everything else is secondary. Not to me. The confession landed between them like a grenade. Min-jae's expression shattered. For 3 heartbeats, neither of them moved. Then his phone buzzed again. He glanced at the screen, and his face went cold. We need to move, he said flatly. Now. Why? Police are mobilizing. They're going to hit every known location associated with me within the hour. We have maybe 10 minutes before they arrive here. Maria's pulse kicked. How do they know about this place? They don't. But they're going to hit everywhere, and this address is on the list. Min-jae crossed to the weapons cabinet and started pulling out pistols and ammunition. There's a vehicle in the underground garage. Keys are in the kitchen drawer. Take your father and go. What about you? I'll buy you time to get clear. By doing what? By making sure they're too busy with me to chase you. Maria grabbed his arm. You're going to turn yourself in. I'm going to lead them away from you. That's not the same thing. It's suicide. It's strategy. It's a death wish. Min-jae pulled free of her grip. It's the only play I have left. Ji-hwan is dead, but his organization is still operational. His lieutenants will consolidate power and come after me eventually. The police are mobilizing. I'm out of allies and running out of places to hide. He met her eyes. So I'm going to draw them away from you long enough for you to disappear. Then I'll figure out my own exit. I'm not leaving without you. You don't have a choice. There's always a choice. Not this time. Min-jae grabbed her shoulders. Listen to me. If you stay, you become complicit. They'll arrest you as an accessory, freeze your assets, drag you through a trial that will destroy whatever's left of your life. Is that what you want? I want you. The words came out broken. Min-jae's expression cracked completely. He pulled her against him and kissed her desperately, like a man saying goodbye. When he pulled back, his eyes were dark. I love you, he whispered, and that's why you have to go. Before Maria could respond, the apartment's security alarm shrieked to life. Min-jae's phone lit up with alerts. They're here, he said. Maria's stomach dropped. Already? Someone tipped them off. They're moving faster than expected. Min-jae grabbed a pistol and checked the magazine. Take your father. Use the service elevator. It opens into the parking garage. The vehicle is a black sedan. License plate ends in 7749. Drive north toward the mountains. There's a cabin 2 hours outside the city. Coordinates are programmed into the GPS. Stay there until I contact you. Min-jae, go. Heavy footsteps pounded up the stairwell. Voices shouted in Korean. Police. Min-jae crossed to the door and braced his shoulder against it. Maria, move! She grabbed her father and pulled him toward the service corridor. He resisted. We can't just leave him. We don't have a choice. They made it to the service elevator, and Maria slammed her hand against the call button. The doors opened immediately. She shoved her father inside. Then she looked back. Min-jae stood silhouetted in the apartment doorway with a gun in his hand and his shoulders squared like a man preparing to fight a war he knew he couldn't win. Their eyes met. Everything Maria wanted to say died in her throat. Then the apartment door exploded inward. Police in tactical gear poured through the opening. Min-jae fired twice and dove behind the kitchen counter. The elevator doors started to close. Maria watched through the narrowing gap as Min-jae traded gunfire with men in body armor, while the apartment shredded around him. Then the doors shut completely. The elevator descended. Maria pressed her back against the wall and tried to breathe through the panic clawing up her throat. Her father grabbed her arm. He'll be okay. You don't know that? He's survived worse. Not surrounded by cops with nowhere to run. The elevator reached the parking garage. The doors opened. Maria and her father ran toward the black sedan. She found the keys exactly where Min-jae said they'd be. Started the engine, threw the vehicle into reverse. Tires squealed against concrete as they shot out of the parking space and headed toward the exit ramp. They made it to street level before the first police car appeared behind them. Lights flashing, siren wailing. Maria floored the accelerator. The sedan shot forward and merged into early morning traffic. Seoul was starting to wake up. Delivery trucks, early commuters, enough vehicles to disappear into if she drove smart. She wove through traffic while her pulse hammered and her hands shook on the wheel. The police car stayed on them. Another joined from a side street, then another. They're boxing us in, her father said. Maria cranked the wheel and took a hard right down a narrow alley. The sedan barely fit between the buildings. Trash cans exploded beneath the bumper. A street vendor dove out of the way, screaming. They shot out the opposite end and merged back into traffic. 2 of the police cars lost them in the turn. 1 stayed on their tail. Maria's phone buzzed in her pocket. She couldn't reach it while driving. Check my phone, she ordered her father. He pulled it from her jacket. A message from Min-jae. Just 2 words. Keep driving. Maria's throat tightened. He was alive. For now. She focused on the road and drove like a woman possessed, through red lights, against traffic, down one-way streets the wrong direction. Every defensive driving technique she'd ever learned from watching action movies applied in real time. The police car stayed with them. Professional, patient, coordinating with other units via radio. They were being herded. Maria realized it too late. She took a hard left to avoid a roadblock and found herself on a bridge spanning the Han River. Traffic had been cleared ahead. Police cars blocked both ends. She slammed on the brakes. The sedan skidded to a stop in the center of the bridge. Trapped. Maria's pulse hammered so loud she could hear it in her skull. Her father's breathing came in short gasps beside her. Police emerged from their vehicles with weapons drawn. A voice echoed through a loudspeaker in Korean. Maria didn't need a translation to understand the command. Get out of the vehicle. Hands up. Surrender. She gripped the steering wheel until her knuckles went white. What do we do? Her father whispered. Maria stared at the police closing in from both sides. Then she looked at the river below. Dark, fast-moving, deadly, but survivable if you hit it right. She made a decision that would either save them or kill them both. Hold on, she said. What? Maria cranked the wheel hard and floored the accelerator. The sedan shot toward the bridge railing. Her father screamed. They hit the barrier at 40 miles per hour. The railing exploded. The sedan launched into open air. For 3 seconds, they were flying. Then gravity remembered them. The vehicle nosed down. Maria's stomach lurched into her throat. They hit the water like a bomb. The impact drove the air from Maria's lungs. Her head cracked against the steering wheel. Blood filled her mouth. The windshield spiderwebbed but didn't shatter. Water flooded through the vents, ice cold, shockingly fast. The sedan began to sink. Maria's ears rang. Her vision blurred. She tasted copper and river water. Beside her, her father was screaming something she couldn't hear. She fumbled for her seatbelt, found the release, pressed. Nothing happened. The mechanism was jammed. Water rose past her waist, her chest, her neck. Panic clawed through her system. She was going to drown trapped in a sinking car while police watched from the bridge above. Her father grabbed her arm, showed her his hands, free. He had gotten his seatbelt off. He reached over and started working on hers. Water covered Maria's mouth. She tilted her head back to keep her nose above the surface. Her father's fingers worked frantically at the jam mechanism. The water reached her nose. She took one last desperate breath. Then the water closed over her head completely. Darkness. Cold. Her lungs burned. Her father's hands were still working at the seatbelt. Then suddenly the pressure released. The belt snapped free. Her father grabbed her arm and pulled her toward his side of the vehicle. His window was open. He must have gotten it down before they hit the water. He shoved Maria through the opening. She kicked toward the surface. Her lungs were on fire. Her vision narrowed to a pinpoint. She broke the surface gasping, sucked in air that tasted like heaven. Her father surfaced beside her seconds later. The current grabbed them immediately and dragged them downstream. Maria fought to keep her head above water while her waterlogged clothes tried to pull her under. Ahead, a concrete piling loomed. She grabbed it and held on while the current tried to rip her away. Her father caught the same piling and pulled himself beside her. They clung to the concrete while their teeth chattered and their bodies went numb from cold. Police lights flashed on the bridge above, but they were already too far downstream to be seen clearly in the dark water. They had disappeared. For now. "We need to move," Maria gasped. Her father nodded. They let go of the piling and let the current carry them another 100 meters before swimming toward the far shore. They crawled onto a muddy bank beneath an overpass where homeless camps clustered in the shadows. Nobody looked twice at two soaked figures collapsing in the dirt. Maria lay on her back and stared at the concrete overhead while her lungs heaved and her entire body shook from adrenaline crash. They had survived. Barely. But they were alive. And Min-jae was still trapped in that apartment trading gunfire with police. Maria's phone was dead, waterlogged, useless. She had no way to contact him, no way to know if he was alive or dead or arrested, no way to help. She was completely alone, except for the father who had sold her, who had lied to her, who had caused all of this through his own weakness and cowardice. Maria sat up slowly. Her father was staring at her with an expression somewhere between shame and relief. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "Don't. I need to say it. I don't want to hear it." "Maria, you sold me." The words came out flat, dead. "You looked at your only daughter and decided she was worth less than your own survival. And then you let me believe for 18 months that I was saving you when really I was just paying off your debts. I was desperate. So was I. Every single day of a marriage I didn't choose. And I survived it without betraying the people I loved." Her father flinched. "I know I can't fix this," he said quietly. "I know there's nothing I can say that will make it better. But I need you to know that I never stopped loving you, even when I made the worst decision of my life. Love isn't supposed to hurt like this. No, it's not." Maria stood on shaking legs. "We need to find transportation," she said. "Get to that cabin Min-jae mentioned before the police expand their search radius. And then we wait. For what? For Min-jae to contact us, or for the news to report that he's dead? Whichever comes first." The words tasted like ash, but they were the truth, and Maria was done pretending truth didn't matter. They walked through pre-dawn Seoul like ghosts, soaked, bloodied, exhausted. Two figures who had fallen through the cracks of a city that devoured the weak and celebrated the ruthless. Maria stole clothes from a laundromat, left cash she found in the sedan's emergency kit to cover the theft, changed in a public bathroom that smelled like urine and broken dreams. Her father did the same. Then they caught a bus heading north toward the mountains. The cabin coordinates were burned into Maria's memory. She had memorized them the moment Min-jae mentioned them, because some part of her had known even then that things would go wrong, that they would end up separated. That survival would mean running alone into darkness with no guarantee of dawn. The bus ride took 3 hours. They sat in the back and didn't speak. Maria stared out the window and watched Seoul disappear behind them, while the sun rose over mountains that looked like freedom and felt like exile. The cabin was exactly where Min-jae said it would be. Isolated, reinforced, stocked with enough supplies to survive for weeks. Maria found the hidden key beneath a rock near the door. They entered. The space was sparse, functional. A single room with a wood-burning stove and cots that looked military surplus. Maria collapsed onto one of the cots. Her father took the other. Neither of them spoke. Maria stared at the ceiling and listened to the silence pressing in from all sides. No gunfire, no sirens, no Min-jae's voice telling her what to do next, just emptiness. And the terrible knowledge that the man she loved was either dead or captured or fighting a battle she couldn't help him win. Hours passed, then a full day, then two. Maria barely moved except to drink water and force down food that tasted like cardboard. Her father tried to talk to her once. She ignored him. On the third day, she finally heard the sound she'd been waiting for. A vehicle approaching up the mountain road. Maria grabbed the pistol Min-jae had left in the cabin and moved to the window. A black SUV pulled up outside. The driver's door opened. Kang Min-jae stepped out. Alive. Bloodied. Moving like every step hurt, but alive. Maria dropped the gun and ran outside. She hit him so hard they both nearly fell. Min-jae caught her and held on like she was the only thing keeping him upright. "You're alive," she gasped against his chest. "Barely." "What happened?" "Later. Right now I need to sit down before I pass out." She helped him inside. He collapsed onto the cot and Maria finally got a good look at him. Bruised, cut, bandages visible beneath his torn shirt, moving like he had broken ribs. "How did you get away?" she asked. "I didn't." Min-jae's voice was rough. "They arrested me, held me for 48 hours. Then someone higher up the chain decided it was politically inconvenient to prosecute me right now, and I was released on a technicality." "What technicality?" "The one where I have enough dirt on enough politicians to bring down the entire government if they push too hard." Maria stared. "You blackmailed your way out of prison." "I negotiated my freedom. There's a difference." "Not really." Min-jae almost smiled. Then he saw Maria's father sitting on the opposite cot. His expression went cold. "You're still here," he said flatly. Maria's father nodded. "Where else would I go?" "Anywhere that isn't near your daughter." "Min-jae?" Maria started. "No." Min-jae pushed himself upright despite the obvious pain it caused. "He needs to hear this. You sold her. You lied to her. You used her as collateral to save yourself. And then, when given the chance to do the right thing, to take responsibility, to sacrifice yourself instead of letting others die for your mistakes, you hid behind her again." "I know." "Do you? Because from where I'm standing, you're still here, still breathing, still expecting forgiveness you haven't earned." Maria's father stood slowly. "You're right. About all of it. I'm a coward. I've always been a coward. And my daughter deserves better than me." "Then leave." "I can't." "Why not?" "Because she's all I have left." Her father's voice broke. "My wife is dead. My business is gone. My reputation is destroyed. Maria is the only good thing I ever created. And I know I don't deserve her forgiveness. I know I should disappear and let her move on with her life. But I can't. Because walking away from her would be the final proof that I was never worth saving in the first place." The confession hung in the air. Min-jae stared at him with an expression carved from ice. Then he turned to Maria. "It's your choice," he said quietly. "He stays or he goes. But I won't make that decision for you." Maria looked between the two men. Her father, broken, ashamed, desperate for redemption he would never fully achieve. Her husband, bloodied, exhausted, giving her the agency he had denied her for 18 months. She made her choice. "He stays," she said. Min-jae's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "Fine, but he sleeps outside. I don't trust him in the same room as you." Maria's father didn't argue. He grabbed a blanket and headed for the door, paused, looked back at Maria. "Thank you," he whispered. Then he left. The door closed behind him. Maria and Min-jae were alone. The silence stretched. Then Min-jae spoke. "You're angry at me." It wasn't a question. "Yes," Maria said, "because I kept secrets. Because you didn't trust me to handle the truth. I was trying to protect you. I know, but protection without trust isn't love. It's control. Min-jae flinched. You're right, he said quietly. I made choices for you, decided what you could handle, kept information from you because I thought I knew better, and I'm sorry. The apology landed between them. Maria crossed the cabin and sat beside him on the cot. I need you to promise me something, she said. What? No more secrets. No more decisions made for me. No more protecting me from truths you think will break me. If we're going to do this, if we're going to build something real out of a marriage that started as a transaction, then we do it as equals. Or not at all. Min-jae stared at her for a long moment. Then he reached up and cupped her face with his battered hands. Equal partners, he said. I promise. You mean it? Yes. Maria searched his eyes for any sign of deception, found only exhaustion and sincerity and love that looked like it hurt. She kissed him, gentle, careful, mindful of his injuries. Min-jae pulled her closer despite the pain it must have caused. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathing hard. What happens now? Maria asked. Now we disappear. Change identities. Leave Korea. Start over somewhere Ji-hwan's remaining lieutenants can't find us. And my father? Comes with us if that's what you want. It is. Min-jae nodded. Then we'll make it work. You're sure? No, but I'm willing to try. Maria rested her head against his shoulder while his arms came around her and held on like she was the only solid thing in a world that kept shifting beneath his feet. Outside, the sun was setting. Inside, two people who had started as strangers were finally becoming something more. Partners. Equals. Two broken people choosing each other despite every reason to walk away. It wasn't redemption. It wasn't a happy ending, but it was honest, and for Maria, that was enough. For now. 3 weeks passed in the mountain cabin before the first sign of trouble appeared. Maria was chopping firewood behind the cabin when she heard the vehicle approaching. The sound carried through the forest, an engine straining against the steep mountain road, getting closer with each passing second. She dropped the axe and ran inside. Min-jae was already moving. He grabbed the rifle from above the doorframe and crossed to the window in 3 strides. His ribs had healed enough that he could move without wincing, but the bruises still painted his torso in shades of purple and yellow. How many? Maria asked. Can't tell yet. Single vehicle. Min-jae's jaw tightened. Could be nothing. Could be everything. Maria's father emerged from the small bedroom where he had been sleeping. In 3 weeks, he had aged another decade. The weight of guilt had carved deep lines into his face that hadn't been there before. Should I? He started. Stay inside, Min-jae ordered. Away from the windows. The vehicle came into view through the trees, a black SUV. Government plates. Not police. Something worse. The SUV pulled up outside the cabin and the engine cut off. For 30 seconds, nothing happened. Just silence and the wind moving through the pines. Then the driver's door opened. A woman stepped out. Mid-40s, sharp suit, the kind of composed authority that came from years of making decisions that destroyed lives and called it policy. She walked toward the cabin with her hands visible at her sides. No weapon, no backup that Maria could see. Min-jae kept the rifle trained on her through the window. The woman stopped 10 feet from the door. Kang Min-jae, she called out in Korean accented English. My name is Director Park. I'm with the National Intelligence Service. I'd like to talk. We have nothing to discuss, Min-jae replied. I disagree. May I come inside? No. Then I'll talk from here. Director Park's expression didn't change. Seo Ji-hwan's organization has fractured. 3 of his lieutenants are fighting over territory. The violence is escalating. Seoul's port district has seen 12 murders in the last 2 weeks, and my superiors are looking for someone to restore order. Not my problem. It could be your opportunity. Min-jae's finger stayed on the trigger. Keep talking. Ji-hwan had connections that went all the way to the top. Politicians, judges, police commissioners. When he died, those connections became orphaned assets. My agency has been tasked with managing the transition of power in Seoul's underworld. We need someone strong enough to consolidate control and smart enough to keep things quiet. You want me to take over Ji-hwan's territory. I want you to restore stability. What you call it, is your business. In exchange for what? Immunity. Your arrest record disappears. The investigation into the Port District explosion gets buried. You operate with our tacit approval as long as you keep the violence contained and the politicians happy. Maria's stomach twisted. This was the offer Min Jae had been waiting for his entire career. Complete legitimacy. Government backing. The kind of power that came with protection instead of persecution. All he had to do was go back to Seoul and become the thing he had spent 3 weeks trying to escape. Min Jae was quiet for a long moment. Then he lowered the rifle. "No," he said. Director Park frowned. "Excuse me?" "I said no. I'm done with Seoul. Done with the empire. Done with being the monster everyone fears." "You're walking away?" "Yes." "From everything you built?" "It was never mine to begin with. I took it from men who took it from other men. And eventually someone will take it from whoever I leave it to. That's how this world works." Min Jae set the rifle down. "I'm choosing a different world." Director Park stared at him like he had lost his mind. "You're serious," she said. "Completely. What about your reputation, your legacy?" "I don't care about either anymore." "What changed?" Min Jae glanced back at Maria. Then he returned his attention to Director Park. "Everything," he said quietly. The woman was silent for several heartbeats. Then she nodded once. "I'll tell my superiors you declined. They won't be happy. But I don't think they'll pursue you if you stay gone." She turned toward her vehicle. "For what it's worth, I think you're making a mistake. Men like you don't get second chances, and walking away from power doesn't mean it stops looking for you." "I'll take my chances." Director Park climbed into the SUV. The engine started. She drove away without looking back. Maria watched through the window until the vehicle disappeared down the mountain road. Then she turned to Min Jae. "You turned her down," she said quietly. "Yes." "Why?" "Because I meant what I said. I'm done being that person." "You loved that life." "No, I was good at it. That's not the same thing." Min Jae crossed to where Maria stood and took her hands in his. "I've spent 15 years building an empire on violence and fear, and the only thing it ever gave me was enemies and nightmares. I'm not doing it anymore." "What will you do instead?" "I don't know yet, but I'll figure it out." He pulled her closer. "With you." Maria searched his eyes for any sign of regret, found only certainty. "You're sure," she said. "I've never been more sure of anything." Maria rose on her toes and kissed him. When they broke apart, Min Jae was almost smiling. "So what now?" she asked. "Now we leave Korea. New identities, new country, new life." "Where?" "Somewhere quiet. Somewhere no one knows my name or cares about the empire I used to run." Min Jae glanced toward the bedroom where Maria's father was hiding. "All three of us." Maria's throat tightened. "You'd do that? Take him with us even after everything? He's your father, and you chose to forgive him. That's enough for me." "It won't be easy. He carries guilt like a second skin." "So do I. Maybe we'll figure out how to live with it together." The words were simple, honest. And for the first time since this entire nightmare began, Maria felt something unfamiliar uncurl in her chest. Hope. They spent 2 more days at the cabin preparing for the journey ahead. Min Jae had contacts who specialized in creating new identities, documents that would pass any border inspection, bank accounts seeded with enough money to start over without leaving a trail. Maria's father helped where he could, packing supplies, organizing documents, moving through the small space like a ghost trying to earn his way back to being human. On the 3rd morning, Maria found him sitting outside on a fallen log, watching the sunrise paint the mountains gold. She sat beside him without speaking. For several minutes, they just watched the light change. Then her father spoke. "I don't expect you to forgive me," he said quietly. "I know. And I don't expect you to forget what I did. I won't. But I need you to know that I'm grateful for the second chance, for you not giving up on me even when I gave up on myself." His voice cracked. "You deserved better than me. You always did." Maria was quiet for a long moment. "You're right," she said finally. "I did deserve better. I deserved a father who protected me instead of selling me, who put my safety above his own survival, who loved me enough to make the hard choice instead of the easy one." Her father flinched. But I also deserve to grow up with a father, instead of spending my life wondering what happened to him. Maria turned to look at him. So I'm choosing to give you the chance to become the father you should have been, not because you've earned it, because I refuse to carry your guilt for the rest of my life. Tears streaked down her father's face. I'll spend every day trying to be worthy of that choice, he whispered. I know. That's why I'm making it. She stood and walked back toward the cabin. Behind her, she heard her father crying quietly in the dawn light. She didn't turn around. Some moments needed to be lived alone. They left the cabin on a gray morning when mist hung low in the valleys and the mountains looked like ghosts dissolving into clouds. Min-jae drove. Maria sat in the passenger seat. Her father sat in the back with their luggage packed around him like armor. They drove south toward Busan, where a cargo ship waited to carry them to Taiwan. From there, they would disappear into Southeast Asia. New names, new faces, new lives built on the ruins of everything they were leaving behind. The drive took 6 hours. Nobody spoke much. There was too much weight in the silence to break it with words that didn't matter. They reached Busan at dusk. The city sprawled along the coast, a labyrinth of shipping containers and industrial complexes in waterfront neighborhoods where nobody asked questions if you paid in cash. Min-jae navigated through narrow streets to a warehouse near the docks. He parked behind the building and killed the engine. Wait here, he said. He disappeared inside. Maria and her father sat in the vehicle while darkness fell and the city's lights flickered to life around them. Are you scared? Her father asked quietly. Yes? Of what? Everything, starting over, not knowing who we'll become, wondering if running is the same as healing or if we're just taking our damage to a new location. And Min-jae? Maria turned to look at him. What about him? Are you scared of him? No, I'm scared for him. He's giving up everything he built, everything he was, and I don't know if he'll wake up one day and regret choosing me over the Empire. He won't. You don't know that. Yes, I do, because I've seen the way he looks at you, like you're the only thing in the world that makes sense anymore. Her father's voice was soft. That's not the look of a man who's going to regret his choice. That's the look of a man who finally figured out what matters. Before Maria could respond, Min-jae emerged from the warehouse with a man in oil-stained coveralls. They spoke briefly in Korean. Money changed hands. The man gestured toward the docks. Min-jae returned to the vehicle. We're clear, he said. Ship leaves in 2 hours. We board now and stay below deck until we're in international waters. They grabbed their luggage and followed the man through the warehouse to a loading dock that opened onto the harbor. A cargo ship waited in the darkness. Massive, rusted, the kind of vessel that moved illegal things between countries and didn't ask questions about passengers who paid in cash. They climbed aboard. The man led them below deck to a small cabin with 3 bunks and a porthole that looked out over black water. Stay quiet, he said in broken English. No lights, no noise. Guards patrol every hour, but they don't check this section. You're ghosts until we dock in Taiwan. He left. The door locked from the outside. Maria set down her bag and sat on one of the bunks. The cabin smelled like diesel and salt water, and decades of people escaping things they couldn't face. Min-jae sat beside her. Her father took the opposite bunk. The ship's engines rumbled to life beneath them. The entire vessel shuddered. Then they felt the movement as the ship pulled away from the dock and headed toward open water. They were leaving Korea, leaving Seoul, leaving behind everything they had been to become something they hadn't figured out yet. Maria leaned against Min-jae's shoulder. He wrapped his arm around her and held on. Outside the porthole, the lights of Busan faded into darkness until there was nothing left except the vast emptiness of the ocean and the knowledge that they were finally free. The journey to Taiwan took 4 days. They stayed below deck the entire time, eating meals brought by the crew, sleeping in shifts, talking in whispers when they talked at all. Mostly they just existed in the strange liminal space between who they had been and who they were becoming. On the 3rd day, Maria's father finally spoke the words that had been hanging between them since the cabin. I'm sorry, he said. Maria looked up from the book she had been pretending to read. You've already said that. I know, but I need to say it again and again, until maybe someday it starts to mean something. It already means something, it's just not enough to undo what you did. I know that too, Maria set down the book. Why did you do it? Really? Not the easy answer about being desperate. The real reason. Her father was quiet for a long time, then he exhaled slowly. Because I was afraid, he said. Afraid of dying. Afraid of pain. Afraid of facing the consequences of my own choices. And in that moment of fear, I convinced myself that your life was worth less than mine, that you were young and resilient and would recover from being sold to a stranger, that I was the one who mattered. And now I know I was wrong, that the worst thing I ever did wasn't gambling away money I didn't have. It was looking at my daughter and deciding she was currency instead of a person I was supposed to protect. His voice broke. I can't undo that. I can't take back the choice, but I can spend whatever time I have left trying to become someone worthy of your forgiveness. Maria felt tears prick her eyes. She blinked them away. I don't know if I can forgive you, she said quietly. Not completely. Not the way you want me to. I understand. But I can try. For my sake. Not yours. Her father nodded. That's more than I deserve. Min-jae had been listening silently from his bunk. Now he spoke. Forgiveness isn't about what people deserve, he said. It's about what you can live with. And if holding on to anger hurts more than letting it go, then forgiveness is just survival by another name. Maria turned to look at him. You sound like you've had practice. 15 years of it. I've forgiven men who betrayed me, forgiven myself for things I can't take back, forgiven enemies I should have killed. Min-jae met her eyes. It doesn't erase what happened, but it makes the weight easier to carry. Is that why you're giving him a second chance? No. I'm giving him a second chance because you asked me to, and because I understand what it feels like to be the villain in someone else's story and desperately want a chance to rewrite the ending. The confession hung in the air. Maria crossed the small cabin and sat beside Min-jae on his bunk. You're not a villain, she said quietly. I've done things that would make you think otherwise. I know what you've done. I know what you are. And I'm choosing you anyway. Min-jae pulled her against him and held on like she was the only thing anchoring him to something better than what he used to be. They docked in Taiwan on a rainy afternoon when the sky looked like bruised metal and the harbor smelled like fish and diesel. Min-jae's contact was waiting on the docks. A thin man in his 60s with quick eyes and hands that never stopped moving. He handed over 3 passports and 3 envelopes of cash without asking questions. The documents will hold up to casual inspection, he said in English. But don't test them at major airports or border crossings. Stay small, stay quiet. And if anyone asks, you're Canadian tourists traveling Southeast Asia. Min-jae handed him a thick envelope. The man counted the money quickly and nodded once. Then he disappeared into the crowd. Maria looked down at her new passport. The photo was hers, but the name wasn't. Sarah Mitchell, Canadian citizen, born in Vancouver. No husband. No history. No connection to a woman named Maria Vale, who had married a monster in Seoul and survived long enough to become something else. She flipped through the pages. All blank. A life waiting to be written. Beside her, Min-jae was examining his own passport. James Park, also Canadian, also starting from nothing. Her father held his passport like it was something fragile that might disintegrate if he gripped too hard. Robert Mitchell, Sarah's father. The family resemblance built into their new identities. Where to now? Maria asked. Min-jae folded his passport and slipped it into his jacket. Thailand. Small town on the coast. Somewhere we can disappear for a few months while we figure out what comes next. They caught a bus to the airport, bought tickets to Bangkok using cash and their new names, passed through security without incident. The passports held. Nobody looked twice at 3 Canadian tourists with carry-on luggage and tired eyes. They boarded the plane and found their seats. Maria sat by the window. Min-jae took the middle seat. Her father sat on the aisle. The plane filled with passengers. Businessmen, families, backpackers, people living normal lives that didn't include running from the past. The engines roared to life. The plane taxied toward the runway. Maria looked out the window at Taiwan disappearing beneath them as they climbed toward clouds. Min-jae's hand found hers in the space between their seats. She laced her fingers through his and held on. The plane leveled off at cruising altitude. The seatbelt sign turned off. And somewhere over the South China Sea, Maria finally let herself believe they had made it, that they were free, that the war was finally over. They landed in Bangkok at midnight. The city was alive with lights and noise and the humid heat that pressed against skin like a living thing. They caught a taxi to the bus station and bought tickets south to a coastal town Min Jae had researched during the flight. The bus left at 2 in the morning. They slept in shifts during the 6-hour journey, watching each other's backs even though nobody was chasing them anymore. Old habits, hard to break. They arrived at dawn. The town was small, maybe 5,000 people. Fishing boats crowded the harbor. Street vendors were already setting up for the morning market. The smell of grilling meat and salt water hung in the air. Min Jae found them a guest house 3 blocks from the beach. The owner was an elderly Thai woman who spoke broken English and didn't ask for identification. Just cash up front for the month. They climbed the stairs to a second-floor room with 2 beds and a balcony overlooking the ocean. Maria stood on the balcony and watched the sun rise over water that stretched to the horizon. Min Jae joined her. They stood in silence while the sky turned from gray to pink to gold. "What do we do now?" Maria asked. "We live." "That's it?" "That's everything." Min Jae wrapped his arms around her from behind. "We wake up. We figure out who we are without the empire. We make mistakes. We try again. We build something that isn't built on violence." "You make it sound simple." "It won't be, but it's possible. And possible is more than I had 3 weeks ago." Maria leaned back against him. The ocean stretched endlessly ahead. Behind them, the past was finally far enough away that it couldn't reach them anymore. And for the first time in 18 months, Maria felt like she could breathe. The first week was the hardest. They woke up expecting danger that never came, checked for threats that didn't exist, lived like people waiting for the other shoe to drop. But slowly the tension began to ease. They fell into routines. Morning walks on the beach, meals at local restaurants where nobody knew their names or cared about their history, afternoons spent reading or swimming or doing absolutely nothing. Maria's father found work at the harbor helping repair fishing nets. The labor was hard, physical, the kind of work that left him exhausted enough to sleep without nightmares. Min Jae struggled more. 15 years of living on adrenaline and strategy didn't prepare him for the quiet emptiness of days without purpose. He grew restless, distant. Maria would find him standing on the balcony at 3 in the morning staring at nothing. On the 10th day, she finally confronted him. "Talk to me," she said. "I'm fine." "You're lying." Min Jae exhaled slowly. "I don't know how to do this." "Do what?" "Be normal. Be the person who wakes up without checking for threats, who makes small talk with fishermen instead of negotiating territory with criminals, who has nothing to fight and no enemies to destroy." His hands gripped the balcony railing. "I've spent my entire adult life being someone else, and now that person is gone and I don't know what's left." Maria moved to stand beside him. "You're left," she said quietly. "The person beneath the mask, the man who chose love over power, who walked away from everything to save the people he cares about. That's not enough." "Why not?" "Because I don't know who that person is yet. I don't know what he wants or what he's good at or what he's supposed to do with the rest of his life." "Then we'll figure it out together." Min Jae finally looked at her. "What if I can't? What if I spent so long being the monster that there's nothing else left?" "Then we build something new, from scratch, piece by piece." Maria took his hand. "You're not broken, Min Jae. You're just healing, and healing looks like nothing until suddenly it doesn't." He pulled her against him and held on like she was the only thing keeping him from falling apart. They stood on the balcony while the sun rose and the ocean whispered and the future remained terrifyingly uncertain. But they were facing it together. And that was enough. The breakthrough came 3 weeks later. Min Jae was walking through the morning market when he saw a man arguing with a vendor. The disagreement was escalating, voices rising, hands gesturing wildly. The old Min Jae would have walked past without engaging, but something made him stop. He stepped between the 2 men and spoke in careful Thai he had been learning from language books. Calm, measured, asking questions instead of making demands. Within 5 minutes, he had negotiated a resolution both parties accepted. The vendor thanked him. The customer thanked him. And Min Jae realized something fundamental had shifted. He had solved a problem without violence, had helped people without expecting anything in return, had used the skills he developed running an empire to make someone's day slightly better instead of significantly worse. It was small, meaningless in the grand scope of things, but it felt like the first real thing he had done since leaving Korea. He told Maria about it that night. She smiled. Maybe that's what you're supposed to do. Mediate arguments at fish markets? Help people. Solve problems. Use everything you learned to build instead of destroy. That's not much of a plan. It's a start, which is more than we had yesterday. Min-jae considered this. Then he nodded slowly. A start, he agreed. Over the following weeks, Min-jae began offering his skills quietly around the town. A struggling restaurant owner needed help negotiating with suppliers. Min-jae brokered a deal that saved the business. A family was being extorted by local criminals. Min-jae made 2 phone calls and the problem disappeared. A young couple wanted to buy property but didn't understand the legal requirements. Min-jae walked them through the process. He didn't advertise, didn't charge money, just helped when he saw opportunities. Word spread quietly through the community. The foreigner who fixed things, who understood how to navigate problems most people couldn't solve alone. It wasn't an empire, it was something better. It was purpose without destruction. 4 months after arriving in Thailand, Maria woke to find Min-jae sitting on the balcony watching the sunrise. But this time he wasn't staring at nothing. He was smiling. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "How different this is from Seoul." "Do you miss it?" "Sometimes. The power, the control, the certainty that came from being feared." He turned to look at her. "But then I remember what it cost. The people who died. The enemies I made. The fact that I couldn't sleep without a gun under my pillow and guards outside my door. And I realize I don't miss it enough to go back." Maria sat beside him. "I'm proud of you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For choosing this. For becoming someone better than who you were." "I'm not better. I'm just different." "Different is good enough." Min-jae pulled her close and kissed her forehead. They sat together while the sun climbed higher and the ocean turned from black to blue to gold. Below them, the town was waking up. Vendors opening shops, fishermen preparing boats, children running toward school. Normal life. The kind Min-jae had spent 15 years destroying for other people. And now he was living it. Not perfectly, not without scars, but living nonetheless. 6 months after leaving Korea, Maria's father finally spoke the words he had been carrying since the cabin. They were sitting on the beach at sunset, just the 2 of them. Min-jae had gone to help a neighbor repair a boat engine. Her father stared at the waves for a long time before speaking. "I'm dying," he said quietly. Maria's breath caught. "What?" "Liver cancer, stage 4. I found out 2 years ago, before the gambling, before I sold you." He turned to look at her. "That's why I was so desperate, why I borrowed money I couldn't repay. I thought if I could just win big enough, I could pay for treatment, buy myself more time." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you would have tried to save me. Bankrupted yourself, paying for treatments that wouldn't work. And I couldn't let you sacrifice your future for a man who was dying anyway." Maria felt tears streaming down her face. "So you sacrificed me instead?" "Yes, and I've regretted it every day since." Her father's voice broke. "I have maybe 6 months left, maybe less, and I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I need you to know that loving you was the only good thing I ever did, even when I failed at showing it." Maria didn't know what to say. Part of her wanted to scream at him for keeping another secret. Part of her wanted to hold him and pretend 6 months could somehow become 60 years. Instead, she just cried. Her father put his arm around her and they sat together while the sun disappeared and the stars came out and the ocean kept moving like nothing had changed. But everything had changed, Maria told Min-jae that night. He listened without interrupting. Then he was quiet for a long moment. "Do you want to stay here?" he asked. "Or take him somewhere with better medical care? He doesn't want treatment. He's made peace with it." "And you?" "I want to spend whatever time he has left not hating him." Maria wiped her eyes. "Is that enough?" "It's more than enough." Min-jae held her while she cried, and when she finally stopped, he made a promise. "We'll make the next 6 months matter," he said. "All of us. We'll build memories instead of regrets. How? However we can. They kept that promise. Over the following months, the three of them traveled through Southeast Asia, Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, places where the history was older than their mistakes and the landscapes were beautiful enough to make forgetting almost possible. Maria's father grew weaker, but he smiled more, laughed at things that weren't particularly funny, told stories from Maria's childhood that she had forgotten, and slowly the distance between them closed. Not completely. Some wounds were too deep to heal fully, but enough that when her father finally died in a hospital in Chiang Mai 5.5 months after his confession, Maria was holding his hand. Min-jae stood beside her, and her father's last words were simple. "Thank you for not giving up on me." Then he was gone. They buried him in a small cemetery outside the city where the mountains rose green against blue sky and the air smelled like jasmine. Maria stood at the grave for a long time after the ceremony ended. Min-jae waited nearby, close enough to reach if she needed him, far enough to give her space to grieve. Finally, she spoke. "I forgave him," she said quietly. "I know. Not because he deserved it, because I needed to. I know that too." "Do you think that makes me weak?" Min-jae crossed to her and took her hand. "No," he said. "It makes you stronger than anyone I've ever known. Because you chose compassion when you had every right to choose hate. And that's the hardest thing a person can do." Maria leaned against him and let herself cry. For her father, for the relationship they never had, for the one they built in the final months, for all of it. They left Thailand 2 weeks later. The town that had sheltered them felt too small now, too filled with memories of her father learning to be someone better before time ran out. They moved to Vietnam, a coastal city called Da Nang, where the beaches stretched for miles and the mountains rose green behind white sand. They rented a small house near the ocean, started over again. Min-jae began working with local NGOs, using his strategic mind to help organizations navigate bureaucracy and corruption, to connect people who needed help with people who could provide it. Maria started teaching English to children at a local school, found purpose in helping kids learn to communicate across languages and cultures. It wasn't the life either of them had imagined, but it was theirs, built on choices instead of obligations, on love instead of strategy, on becoming instead of running. 1 year after leaving Korea, Min-jae asked Maria to marry him, not with a contract or a business deal or a transaction designed to save someone from their mistakes, just with a question. "Will you marry me?" They were standing on the beach at sunset, the same beach where they walked every morning. Maria looked at the ring he was holding, simple, silver, nothing like the expensive diamond she had worn for 18 months in Seoul. "We're already married," she said. "That was strategy. This is choice." "What's the difference?" "Everything." Min-jae took her hand. "I want to marry you because I love you, not because I need you or because it serves a purpose or because it protects either of us from anything, just because I choose you, every day, for the rest of my life." Maria felt tears sliding down her face. "Yes," she whispered. They got married 3 weeks later, a small ceremony on the beach with no guests except the ocean and the sky. An officiant who spoke broken English and smiled throughout the entire ceremony. Vows written by two people who had learned the hard way that love wasn't about perfection. It was about choosing each other even when everything else fell apart. That night, they lay tangled together in their small house, while the ocean whispered beyond the windows. "Do you ever regret it?" Maria asked quietly. "Regret what?" "Walking away, giving up the empire, choosing this life instead of that one." Min-jae was quiet for a moment. "Sometimes I miss the power," he admitted, "the certainty that came from being in control. But then I wake up next to you and realize I have something I never had in Seoul." "What's that?" "Peace." Maria turned to look at him. "Really?" "Really. For 15 years I lived in a war zone of my own creation. Every day was strategy, every relationship was leverage, every person was either useful or dangerous." He pulled her closer. "And then I met you, and you reminded me that there's more to life than survival, that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stop fighting and start living." "I didn't do anything. You loved me when I didn't deserve it. You chose me when you had every reason to walk away. You showed me what it felt like to be human instead of a weapon. Min-jae's voice dropped. That's everything. Maria kissed him, slow, tender, the kind of kiss that said more than words ever could. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were smiling. Outside, the ocean kept moving. The stars burned overhead. And two people who had started as strangers found themselves exactly where they were supposed to be. Not in a penthouse overlooking Seoul, not surrounded by power and violence and fear, just in a small house by the ocean where the only thing that mattered was the choice they made every morning to keep choosing each other. It wasn't a fairy tale. It wasn't redemption. It was just life. Messy. Complicated. Beautiful. And somehow, against all odds, it was enough. Years passed. Maria and Min-jae built a life in Vietnam that looked nothing like the one they left behind in Korea. They worked. They traveled. They made friends who knew them as James and Sarah Mitchell instead of the people they used to be. They fought sometimes, disagreed about things that mattered and things that didn't, carried scars that never fully healed, but they kept choosing each other. Every morning, every argument, every moment when walking away would have been easier than staying. On the 5th anniversary of leaving Korea, Maria woke to find Min-jae standing on their balcony watching the sunrise. She joined him. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "How far we've come. Do you miss Seoul?" "Sometimes, but not enough to go back." "What if we could? What if someone offered you the empire again? Would you take it?" Min-jae turned to look at her. "No," he said without hesitation, "because I've learned something in the last 5 years." "What's that?" "That power built on fear is just a cage with better furniture, and I'd rather be free with you than powerful without you." Maria smiled. "Good answer." "I meant it." "I know." They stood together while the sun climbed higher and the ocean turned from black to blue to gold. Below them, the city was waking up, vendors opening shops, fishermen preparing boats, children running toward school. Normal life. The kind they had built together piece by piece. The kind that wasn't perfect, but was theirs. And as Maria stood beside the man who had once been the most dangerous person in Seoul but was now just her husband, she realized something fundamental. They had survived. Not just the war with Ji-hwan, not just the escape from Korea, but the hardest battle of all, the one to become better than who they used to be. It wasn't a complete transformation. Min-jae still woke sometimes from nightmares about the men he had killed. Maria still carried scars from a marriage that started as a transaction. They both struggled with the weight of choices they couldn't undo, but they were healing. Slowly. Imperfectly. Together. And that was enough. The sun finished rising. The day began. And two people who had spent 18 months pretending to be married finally understood what it meant to choose each other, not because they had to, because they wanted to, every single day, for the rest of their lives. The end.